What's up, everybody? Welcome back. To the 3 of 7 podcast. I'm glad you're joining me for today. Today is a full-length interview-style episode with a really cool dude and friend of mine named Mike Cabrero. Mike has got an awesome story. Look, this dude, Mike, retired from the Marine Corps after 20 years. He's got a bachelor's degree in aeronautics, a master's of science. He was promoted to the rank of Gunnery Sergeant while serving in the Marine Corps. He's an aspiring ultra-runner, and not an aspiring ultra-runner. He is an ultra-runner. He's done multiple races, and Mike really goes deep with us today through all the aspects of his story and lessons learned throughout a life of service and commitment. This is awesome. We recorded this a while back. I've been waiting to share this with you guys. I hope you enjoy it. And today's episode is brought to you by Wake Up Foods or Wake Up Waffles, okay? You guys have heard me maybe talk about Wake Up Waffles. I was introduced to them during the Mid-State Mile, a last man standing ultra marathon. I was out there with my buddies Jesse and Mark, and they kept bringing me these waffles out, man. And I was eating them throughout the course of this 30-hour race, and they fueled me. They tasted so good, and they were easy on my stomach. And ever since then, I've been sold on Wake Up Waffles. I eat them pretty much every day. So if you're looking for like a good snack in the mornings or really any time throughout the day or something good, to fuel you at your next race, check out Wake Up Waffles. It's the world's first plant-based, gluten-free, nut-free, soy-free waffles. Like I said, they're easy on your stomach. Their website is www.wakeupfoods.com. Check them out on Instagram at wake.upfoods. That's Wake Up Waffles. Go check them out. Thanks for sponsoring the 3 of 7 podcast, guys. Our next sponsor is Natural Rapport. These are some of our favorites. They make uncomplicated pet essentials. All their products are gentle, safe, and effective. They are all made in the USA 100%. The product line consists of plant-based grooming products, single-ingredient treats, all-natural chews, and a full line of no-bake soft chew supplements. These are for your animals, your dogs. Hopefully you have dogs. If you don't, you need to go get a dog because it really, they bring a lot of value into life. We have dogs. This is what we treat them with. What we care for them with is Natural Rapport products. We've been using them now exclusively for about the last probably 6 months. It's an amazing company, amazing products, 100% made in America. That means a lot to us. Check them out at their new website, nattyrap.com, nattyrap.com, or on Instagram. Their Instagram page is awesome if you like dogs, at Natural Rapport on Instagram. They gave us a pro code too. I'll attach that in the show notes of this episode. So, Natural Rapport and Wake Up Waffles. I don't promote products on here that I don't use on a daily basis myself in my own life. I promise you they'll work. You'll love them. Check them out. Support the companies that support this podcast. Love you guys. That's enough housekeeping. Here's Mike Cabrero. Enjoy. What is up, brother?
What's going on, brother? How are you?
Oh, man, I'm doing outstanding, dude. Fired up to have you on the 3 of 7 podcast. Welcome, man.
Thanks, dude. Well, I tell you what, after watching you run races and have the conversations that you have with the people that you do, man, I feel I'm a little more excited than you, brother.
Hey, man, God is good. He's made the path pretty easy for me, man. I just got to stay true to him and keep marching forward. And, it's people like you that make the podcast so awesome. I definitely couldn't do it without, guys like you and girls and women too that are willing to come on and share their story, dude. And, man, you've been getting after it. I mean, I got engrossed in your Instagram account today, and it was just so solid with, your posts were so solid, and just seeing the journey that you were on with the 69 miler that you did and the live videos that you posted. And man, you have been getting after it, brother. So, I mean, you're the perfect guest for the 3 of 7 podcast. So
thanks, man.
Super excited.
The timing was definitely set up, at a higher level.
Oh, 100%, man. 100%. And I just want to, of course, we'll dig into your life and your lessons and, the whole 9 yards. But just for the listeners, this is Mike. Mike, how do you say your last name? I don't want to screw it up.
That's all right. Cabrero, so Cabrero.
Sweet. Mike Cabrero. Mike is a Marine. There's no such thing as former Marines, right?
That's right.
Yep. Mike
Marine
is
for life. Once a Marine, always a Marine.
That's it, brother. Mike is a Marine. He did 20 years in the Marine Corps. He's now retired. He is a ultra runner, a father, a husband. And are you a pastor now too, Mike?
No, but I believe anybody that's representing the body of Christ is a pastor, right?
Amen to that, brother. Amen to that. Yeah, and we'll dig into that here in just a little bit because I know I saw that as part of your bio was you guys have assisted in launching a new church plant there in, California. Wow.
Yeah, so the last time that I was stationed in Oceanside, California, which was about 3 years ago. So let's see, we got there in 2000 at the last half of 2013, and then we finished up there in 2017. But during that time, we had gotten plugged in with a church that was in the planting process there in Oceanside, California. And we put our hands up, made ourselves available, to go and spread the good news in that area, which was, considerably unchurched. And we just wanted to be a part of that movement.
That's amazing, brother. I can't wait to get more in depth about that. And you're in Texas now, right?
Yes, sir. Just north of Fort Worth. So I'm here in Roanoke, Texas.
What is it with you Texas guys, man? Because we had so many dudes from Texas in the teams. I think Texas natives make up like probably 20% of the SEAL teams, man. I don't know what they're feeding you guys down there, and every one of you end up going back to Texas. What's the deal, man?
I don't know, man. Maybe it's the star on the flag. Maybe it's the red, the white, the blue. Maybe it's just I would definitely say that we're born and bred with a huge heart and a huge amount of pride for where we come from and what we want to represent. And I just feel like that kind of naturally falls into a life of service or a life of good work.
Yeah, man, something's got to be going on down there. And I've never spent any time. I've never spent any time in Texas. I'm buddies with Marcus Luttrell. He's out there, and a bunch of my other good friends from the teams are out there. And I got to make a trip out there and just hang out with you guys and see what the buzz is all about because it's got to be something special, man. So I love it, man.
That'd be awesome to have you in town. So if you do, we're definitely going to go sweat together, man.
Roger that, man. That sounds like a plan. And, that kind of just leads me into where I kind of want to start the podcast off was, in the beginning, you talked about, you were born and raised there in Texas. Mm-hmm. And you talked a little bit about your childhood in your bio, but I want you to walk me through kind of what it was like growing up, what values were instilled in you and what are some challenges that you faced, through that beginning portion of your life, man?
Yeah, for sure. So I was born in Houston, Texas, down in the south end of the state. And, from there, I was the firstborn of 3 boys to my mom and dad. And, they were really young. My mom had me shortly after high school. She had tried to give college a try. And, her and my dad got pregnant at that time, and he was just out of the Army. And so they just buckled up and hit the gas and, tried to figure things out. And so, basically I spent almost all of my life, from kindergarten through high school in a small town, probably not so small anymore, Pearland, Texas, which is right on the south side of Houston. We just, that's where we were at. We didn't move. We didn't, change schools or shift around, but that was us. That's where we were at. So for the listeners, this is going to be a story of a normal person. This isn't, someone who, how these outlying conditions that made me some extraordinary person. If you're listening and you're looking for your story, I hope that I'm able to help build that bridge. But anyway, getting back to it. So, my parents were, trying to make their way. My dad, a plumber, a second generation plumber, after his dad had been in the Army and came back home and became a plumber. And my dad followed suit. And, my mom was doing banking, I think, for most of the time that I was a young child. And then my brothers came along. My second brother, a couple of years after me, and then our youngest brother, about 8 years after me. So we got a house full of kids and a small little duplex in Pearland, Texas. And, life was just happening. We were rocking and rolling. And I'd say, about the typical time, I mean, I'm feeling it now because I've got, 4 young kids of my own, where the stress of, having a big family and just trying to provide, and the natural stresses of, I've got things to do, and I'd also like things that I'd like to achieve. And you get kind of torn in between those circumstances. And I imagine that's what my parents, were feeling, because, they were just 20 or so, whenever I came along, and they just were living life as young parents, and there's stresses there. No one's really making a, surmountable, amount of income or anything like that. But we're just a little Texas family on, down there in Houston, and we're just trying to make our way. And I would say, as the responsibilities kind of stepped up, and my middle brother and I are kind of coming up into middle school and junior high, and we're kind of starting to develop and become young men. We're bringing home problems because we're dealing with bullies, we're dealing with arguments, and we're got all the little dramas with our families and neighbors and so on and so forth, and kind of all that gets mixed into the family works. And that weighs on parents because they want the best for their kids, and so on and so forth. And that kind of leads into a mixture of feelings with, things going on, in the home with the family, but also with my dad's work, where, he's, at that time, I would say he was probably with a company where maybe he wasn't with the best influences. So we kind of had that pouring into life. And obviously, work always comes home, no matter what we feel like a work-life balance is supposed to be. But it was what it was. And then there was a couple of other ingredients that were really important to this equation as it was developing. But, I'm not sure where all that stemmed from, but my grandfather, my dad's dad, had handed down, some physical abuse, quite a bit of it, and substance abuse as well, which he ended up passing away when my dad was really young. So I couldn't imagine what all that did to his heart, because I believe I was maybe like 2 years old, 3 years old when my grandfather passed away. So I never met him. But I do know that, an impression was made, and, that our family had an ingredient that maybe not all families had, and wasn't necessarily a good one. So I get into middle school, and, things are kind of rocking and rolling there, and I'm just kind of being a kid. And I'd say when I got to 6th grade is kind of when things started to get really interesting, because obviously that's a very impressionable time for a young man. I've got all my friends doing whatever they're doing, and I start to kind of fall into the influence of fellowship.
Yeah.
And people think that, oh, well, he's not going to talk about, the drugs or the alcohol yet, or no. I was being poisoned by kids just doing what they wanted to do, or at least that's what I saw, and I wanted to do it. And I think that sometimes being a follower can be good if the intentions are good and the resource is great. But if it's not, then you end up with the other thing. And so my thing in 6th grade was comic books. I wanted to collect comic books more than I wanted to collect A's, B's, or a good attendance, or attention to my teacher. And something really interesting happened, and I find this interesting now that I have the life experience that I have. But I was failing pretty bad, and I even went to summer school. My parents sent me to summer school, and it wasn't good enough. And they said, well, we can send you to another class of summer school to get the credit that you need, or you can repeat the grade. Now, I'm saying that just like it happened. My parents gave me, a failing 6th grader, the option of what I wanted to do with my summer.
Now, were they still together at this point?
Yeah.
Mike?
So yeah, and this
Eh,
is where I believe that I think we're starting to lose touch with our responsibilities as parents, and
yeah, yeah,
in that situation, and there's, to their credit, I mean, they didn't have the influences that I feel they needed to make a different kind of decision. And so I don't put any of that fault on them, because they didn't have mentors. They weren't looking for guidance. And,
yeah,
I think they were just doing the best they can. And honestly, they had three young, I mean, we were crazy boys, man. We were wild at heart,
yep.
so we were just kind of doing what we wanted to do. And I think they still had so much growing up to do. So,
Mm-hmm.
Mom and Dad, I love you so much. And I don't blame you for any of that, because I know what that's like now. So, anyways, so I repeated. Now I'm behind my peers in school, and I move up, and through time, the my bad grades continue, and so I start coming home to more and more whoopings, because my dad had continued to have high expectations for me, and I continued to fail at those expectations. And I would say that the ingredients of alcohol and abuse, separately and together, um, really started to come through. And it got to a pretty rough point to where, if I'm going to be an open book, I'll go as far as we describe the beast. So there was a time where I guess my dad was just he didn't know what to do. And the boys that he raised, were of his blood and of his character, and we were hardcore. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
we weren't much to look at as young little stick figures, but we had, hearts of bronze when it came to, you know, I'm just gonna do what I'm gonna do.
Yep.
So anyway, um, so we eventually moved up in the spankings and the hitting and the ear grabbing and pulling, and you know squeezing the pressure points with his big thick plumber fingers to
Yep.
um, one day we had an axe handle, and through using it, chopping off wood, I don't even know what we were doing, burning wood in South Texas. We couldn't get that cold, but I'll never forget that old wood axe handle. And my dad actually, I don't remember if he was drinking or not. I imagine so, because that was typically, when things like that happen. But
Mm-hmm.
um, he named it. He named it the Beast, purposely, and he kept it just around the corner, inside the door of the closet under the stairs. And he knew that that's where we put our stuff when we came home from school, when we left. But we were going to see it all the time, and it was a constant reminder of pain. And if you don't do what you're supposed to do, that pain's coming.
Yep. Yep.
And before I continue on with talking about these scenarios, I've done a ton of healing with my dad over the years, after a lot of heartbreak and a lot of distrust and a lot of brokenness.
Mm-hmm.
But he has come back to me, and we have both asked for forgiveness from both ends of the spectrum. We've both given it, and we've also extended a ton of grace. So before I go telling the entire world, and putting this in the history books, I love my dad dearly, and he's an amazing man and a great influence in my life.
That's powerful, brother. And you
Thank
want
you.
to talk about the grace of God, man.
Mm-hmm.
Thank God that we serve a God that can allow us to forgive one another for the things that we've done to each other.
Absolutely.
Even as I've experienced that in my own life and in my own marriage, where I've done things, and my wife has done things, and
Mm-hmm.
my dad has done things, and things are seemingly unforgivable.
Yep.
But by the grace of God, we've been able to forgive one another in a true sense. I mean, a true sense of forgiveness. Things that you should, another person would say, how do you still how can you still look at that person? And it's like, by the grace of God, you know what I mean? And we've been able to heal. I've experienced that healing in my own life, man, when it comes to forgiveness, and when it comes to especially forgiving the people that you love, because you have to get to that point, man, because life's going to continue on. And man, it's so cliche, but you talk about family, man. There's really nothing more important on earth than those close family members, and you got to pray for the ability to forgive them in a real way, man. Just like Christ forgives us for every mistake that we've made along the journeys that we've had. And it's, man, you want to talk about a perfect example of unconditional love. So I can understand that. I appreciate the fact that you sharing that right off the bat with how you and your father were able to come to that place and now, have that relationship still after all the trauma that you guys went through in the earlier years, man. So that's a powerful point in and of itself, brother.
Thank you. So, after the beatings kind of continued over time, it was mixed in with a lot of good, memories and activities as we were growing up. My dad was the one that taught me how to tie a fisherman's knot. My dad was the one that, showed me how to use a tiny torpedo to get the topwater bass. My dad was the one that taught me how to start a fire at a Cub Scout, retreat. My dad would, like me now, my dad, made his best effort to, whatever work was doing. If we boys had a field trip at school, he wanted to represent as a, oh man, why can't I think of the word? Just as a parent, to go and help out with the kids and what they were doing. Chauffeur, sorry, there it is. But anyway, so he was involved. He wanted to be there, but the difference in terms for each of these sides of him was the added alcohol ingredient. Whenever he would get intoxicated, and I want to say intoxicated because I don't want to condemn anybody who just has a drink or uses tobacco or whatever your little vice is. But I mean the moment something becomes so important that you can't breathe without it, then you've got to step back and you have to evaluate.
100%, man. And I agree with you. I agree with you on that point too, Mike, because look, man, I'll go down here and have a bite for dinner and I'll drink a good craft beer, dude. Like I don't have an issue with that, but if you want to look at it from a biblical standpoint, which is where I try to find all my truth, we as children of God, we're called to be sober, right? The Bible specifically says be sober. It doesn't say you can't drink a beer, have a glass of wine. It says you need to be sober. So there is a distinction there, just like you said, between having a drink and being intoxicated, which at that point, that's where the sin is involved. And that is where that situation usually leads to more sin that you would not even think of committing or would even think of if you were sober. And that's the reason the Bible calls us to be sober, man.
Absolutely. Yep. Moving forward, so things to continue to progress regardless of, whatever abuse or whatever was happening. But, things that, a 12 and 11 and, 5-year-old, don't understand are happening in a marriage behind the scenes. So, my dad's kind of, slipping into, making decisions where, he's not sure if he wants to go to the church that we're currently going to. And we kind of church hopped a little bit, man. We went to, I was born and kind of raised into Baptist churches. And then because his boss, went to Church of the Nazarene. So we went and tried that out. And I'll tell you honestly, man, I couldn't tell you the difference between the two other than like how some of them, how some practices of faith, look at certain holidays or occasions or things like that. But other than that, they all put themselves at the foot of Jesus. And, I can look back and I can say, everybody loves Jesus, the same exact Jesus that I worship today. And so, while they were just different experiences, I think that they definitely became, a part of the greater perspective that I have and the God that I worship, because, a lot of people are out there, talking about how their church is better and how one church may not be, quite to their level. But I'll tell you right now, if they're digging into the same scripture of God and the story of Jesus that you are, then that's the same Christian brother that you're going to see in heaven. So go ahead and get comfortable with different.
Yeah, that's a solid word, man. And, church to me is about fellowship, man. It's about going to a place that's really essentially what it is to me. It's about going to a safe place where you can be around people and share testimonies and encourage one another and praise God, really. I mean, I've never been one to go to church to learn. Thankfully, I still have a pretty good brain, and I'm able to read and understand Scripture, and I'm able to listen to what the Holy Spirit is speaking into my life, and be aware of the missions that He's placed before me. But you're exactly right, man. Don't get too wrapped around the axle about the differences between, or the minor differences between, different denominations. And, I am hesitant to even get on that topic because it's such a hot topic.
Yeah.
All that matters is exactly what you said. The cross is all that matters. And that's the thing about being a child of, or a follower or a disciple of Jesus Christ. I think it's starting to get lost now.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus is the cornerstone.
Yep.
And I talk to a lot of people that might think that they're okay as long as they believe in God or a creator. But it's like Jesus is the cornerstone. And being a follower of Christ, it is exclusive. And that, like, you have to, like you said, you have to get down at the feet of Jesus, like that specific God. And I think that's being lost a little bit, man. But He is the cornerstone, dude, and it is an exclusive relationship. That's the only way to get that eternal life. Sorry, I didn't mean to go off on that tangent, man.
No, man, no, and that's a great point to make, and I'm going to help you in that direction. If anybody out there is comparing and contrasting their belief against someone else's, so much that you believe that you're getting closer to God, then your God is too small.
That's good.
Your
brother.
God is way too small.
That's good.
You need to worship a God that you cannot reach, the one that you need Jesus for.
Yep. Good stuff, brother.
So moving back on, into fellowship and really just got myself lost in the turmoil and the abuse and the things that were going on in our household. And, I basically just continued that pattern straight into high school. My parents eventually split up. My dad had some, rough influences around him as far as, friends, people he was interacting with, and, just I wouldn't say bad people, I mean, I guess they were well-intended people because they were family friends and this and that, but it was just kind of like dominoes falling, man. And I can specifically remember whenever my dad sat us down as a family at the kitchen table and is telling us, 12 and 11-year-old and, the 5-year-old brother that I've got, at the time, and, your mom and I are going to get a divorce and this and that. We're kind of having that talk. And I'm just like, I don't even understand that. And I'm kind of losing it and getting furious because we've seen our friends in our neighborhood kind of all been going through this at the same kind of time. So all of our parents are at the same age, right?
Yeah.
And he actually kind of threw that out there. He had the courage to say, as we were in rebellion right there, he said, well, what about your friends? How many of your friends' parents are getting divorced right now? And he kind of threw that out as an excuse. Now, I'll say that that's a very immature thing to do, but he was a very immature person. And I don't want to give him an excuse, but he was. Yeah. And, I'll agree that I was a very immature person at that year in my marriage, and I still have a ton of growing up I have to do, which is why I stretch myself thin with challenges to find that, that continued growth and maturity by, challenging myself.
Yep.
But anyway, so that led me into, they get their divorce, finalized the summer before I'm going into high school, which, is probably the time that you want a father figure in your life. And I went cold turkey on my dad whenever they split up. He even so much as, tried to, challenge me. Well, with, you have to show up to these court appointed, visitations and things like that. And I was just so furious. I looked him in his eye, and this was the first time I believe I'd ever looked him in his eye and made a promise. But I looked him in the eye and I said, you can put me in a cop car, you can take me to your house, but the minute you close your eyes, I'm going to disappear, and you won't be able to find me. And it was kind of a time where, I was so broken.
Where was the anger coming from? Were you angry at him because you felt like he quit on you guys, or what was stemming?
Nail on the head. I felt like I wasn't enough to be loved for him to stick around and figure it out. But more importantly, you know, he was hitting me, but he was hitting my mom too, and just the I just couldn't deal with the quitting.
Mm-hmm.
I just couldn't understand. Like, our lives weren't easy. They weren't polished, and they weren't, the most beautiful thing. But they were ours, and they were our gems. They were our treasures.
Mm-hmm.
And where was I to go? No one gave me no one gave me a choice to walk away from, my family and go do whatever I wanted to do. So I just didn't understand what excused him, from his love.
Yeah, that could only imagine, man. I could. Yeah.
So, so just being rebellious. I mean, his rule in our home as he was growing up, and I think a lot of fathers throw this out unintentionally, but they say, you live under my house, you're going to abide by my rules. Well, the day he walked out of there, his rules walked out with him. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you, me and especially my middle brother, just because we were at that impressionable age, man, that led to a bad place. We both immediately started smoking cigarettes. I was 13. My brother was 11. He was right behind me, but we had the same group of peers, so we were falling to the same influences. We were drinking beer. We were, stealing cigarettes from the store down the street. We were doing whatever we wanted to do. And I'll be honest, a lot of people are probably asking themselves, well, where was your mom? Where was your accountability? This and that. My mom needed my dad. She married my dad to live the rest of her life with my dad. Mm-hmm. And when he broke that, he broke us all, Now I'll say that he was broken too, because I don't believe that it was in his character to take vows with the intention of one day, walking away the way he did. Oh, and by the way, the reason the divorce went forward is he cheated on my mom. He had an affair with the lady next door, who he is now married to, who we have also had the same reconciliation. And Judy is a sweetheart, and I love her to death. And we have grown so much since then. And again, grace and forgiveness and growth and love has been shared and extended. And I feel we are all better human beings, for it.
That's amazing, man. I mean, what a story of forgiveness, man. I mean, you do not hear stories like this very often, no. Dude. I mean, that's just unbelievable. And, you talk about when your father did walk out, and then, like you said, you no longer were living under his rule, because he was, even though he may have been abusive, you still viewed him as the head and the leader of your family unit, and those rules were gone. And man, you can't, I cannot help but look at our society today and wonder if the root of so many of our problems is fatherless homes. That always crosses my mind, because I mean, I don't even know the statistics on it. I bet it's astounding how many fatherless children there are right now. And if you looked back through the last 10 years, how many fatherless children are now out adults, that have never, I don't know, man. It reminds me of this Bible verse, and I'll read it to you right here. It says, "Behold, I will send you Elijah the prophet before the great and awesome day of the Lord comes, and he will turn the hearts of fathers to their children, and children to their fathers." And I don't know exactly what God means by that. I'm going to have to go back and search really search out the context of that verse. But what a glorious day it's going to be when we see God turn the hearts of fathers to their children and turn the hearts of children to their fathers. You want to talk about
Absolutely.
an unbelievable impact on the human race. I can't think of
Absolutely.
anything. I can't think of anything
Yeah.
other than maybe love your neighbor as you love yourself.
Yes.
You know, that's about that. Man, if you could fix those two problems, we'd be living in a different world, brother. It's just something to
Man.
think about for fathers out there. Oh my gosh, if you're at a and Mike can probably tell you this in a way more impactful way than I can. But man, if you're at a point in your marriage that is just hard. I've been there before with my wife. I remember calling my brother like it was yesterday and saying, "Man, I cannot do this anymore."
Yeah.
Like, and him saying, "Chad, you don't have a choice. Like, you don't have a choice." And
Yeah.
you know, again, go back to a principle of nature. The darkest, coldest part of every single night is right before the dawn breaks. It's a principle of nature. So it also transfers to your marriage. It transfers to ultra running. It transfers to every aspect of your life. Man, if you can just hold on, when it's so dark that you just feel like you can't go another step, if you can just hold on for just a little bit longer, the dawn is coming. The dawn is going to break.
Here's something I want to remind dads, fathers, husbands, wives. No one's excused from this. If you trade vows with someone, if you make a promise with someone, if you invest yourself in something, you're a volunteer. Now I had to remember that in 20 years of service as a United States Marine, and there were many days where I did not want to wear camouflage. There were many days, but it wasn't because I didn't love it. It was just because I didn't like it. And like and love are two different scales to weigh your circumstances.
Mm.
If you like something, it's as good as your personality. But when it comes to love, you're weighing your character. And if you don't know the difference between your personality, which is the face value of who you are when you're standing before someone, and your character, which is when you're going through something with someone and you're at your end, then you need to get an education in life and your circumstances and your character.
Yep. Solid word, brother. Solid word right there, man. I love it. You put it so clear and concise. Take that and run with it if you're listening to this podcast and you're in that place in your life. Thank you, Mike. That's amazing,
Yeah.
brother.
So moving on into high school, after the divorce has gone through, I get into high school and nothing's changed other than I'm with bigger kids with bigger problems and, making, more bad decisions. Just basically I'm wearing what everyone else is wearing. I'm cutting my hair how everyone else is cutting their hair. I'm listening to music that, I'm just following. I'm just doing really good at following and trying to be liked and, just trying to make sure that no one forgets who I am, even though I was never anything prominent, in the high school body. So I wound up, no surprise, I failed ninth grade and I got held back, but I had to do enough between my 11th and 12th grade year. And you're hearing this right. I had to catch up to graduate 1 year behind. So out of 500 kids graduating in 1999 from Pearland High School, I graduated number 426. How I even got that high, I don't know, because I wasn't even trying. I just wasn't trying. I had to do extracurricular courses and do, all the extra, co-op classes or anything that would easily give me credits. And then I also had to, my graduation requirements had to drop to the lowest required graduation standard. Basically, I lowered my standard. I lowered my standard to move forward in life, which I'm not proud of in the slightest. So I graduated high school with a 1.663 GPA, and that's a real number. And yeah, it's embarrassing. I've shared that throughout my career as I've tried to teach lessons of where I've been in my life because as my service as a Marine, I've encountered many young adults, and I've just used that time to share my experiences and share my growth. So after that, towards the end of high school, I'm in my senior year. I'm in a shop class, and I'll never forget in the wood shop class, the staff sergeant comes in. He's in his dress blues. He's looking sharp. As a person, not really much of a guy, like not a big stature or anything. Kind of had the little nerdy glasses on. Come to find out, at some point he was an F-18 mechanic, so he was really good with his hands. He had a brain in his head, but nothing could have prepared me for the interaction that our class had. So we had about 9 to 10 guys in that class, young men in that class, and we were all kind of just nonsense, doing whatever we wanted to do. But when that recruiter walked in that classroom, I'd never known any of those guys to just close their mouths and give anyone attention and their respect. And it wasn't him as a human being, it was just him and his presence as a service member.
Yep.
He walked in like he believed, like he represented his organization. He didn't have a lot of words to say, kind of, gave us some of the tidbits on, the perks and the benefits of, joining the service in the Marine Corps. And he did his spiel and he walked out. And I'll never forget the reaction after that, because he walked out of the room, door closes, and I look over to a friend. I'm pretty sure it's this guy named Ben, who eventually joined the Navy, which was funny. But I looked over at Ben and I said, that's what I'm going to do with my life.
Wow, man.
Because I had not known. I had zero inclination that those words were going to come out of my mouth. I just said, that's what I'm going to do. And he looked at me, and I'll never forget, he looked back at me and he smirked with disbelief, because that's who I was. I was not a believable person.
Mm-hmm.
And there was no one else doing it. So why would he believe that I'm going to do it? Right.
Yep.
So,
and the Marine Corps does a lot of stuff right. But one of the things that they got down pat is discipline and uniform and that presence, man. I mean, when you see a Marine for the first time, especially in that dress uniform, it's going to grab your attention real quick, man. And
absolutely,
a lot of the things that we fought in the SEAL teams, talking about haircuts, talking about uniforms and all that stuff, we fought that stuff tooth and nail, dude.
Yeah.
But, man, when you see a Marine that's squared away and they're in uniform, it's like can't nobody top it. Not in the U.S. military, man. Y'all got that figured out. I want to go back to one thing, Mike, because before we transition into kind of the next part of your journey, man, going back to your childhood, I just got to ask you this question, dude. You talked about, as you were growing up as a young man, kind of how those punishments or how those spankings, if you want to call it, how they just kind of progressively got worse and worse. And, now you're a father, man, and you've got young men young sons, and you're in that position. How do you feel about that? And that's a hot topic these days, has been for a long time, How do you feel about, spanking children? What's your take on that, brother? I'll leave it at that and let you go. I got to ask you, though, because I feel like you're going to have a sound perspective on it.
Yeah, no, that's a fantastic question. And those are decisions that I've had to come through a very, very long process. I'm really glad that you asked that. I could tell that when my dad would hit us, it was just kind of what he understood. It was a behavior that he was just so familiar with that's how things got done. Maybe in his generation, and that's what we fail to forget, is that people are changing with generations. You're not raising yourself; you're raising someone else. But anyways, so he was trying to raise me like his father raised him. Only problem is time has changed since then. And I don't think that he should have been any easier in his expectations, but I feel like, he really failed in raising his expectations, but not his level of awareness. And I feel like that's the gap that a lot of people really find themselves in when they get lost in, what they should be doing, what they shouldn't be doing. One thing I'll never forget is the pain that lingers. And I don't mean the physical pain. I mean, I made bad grades and you hit me. And I know that those two add up. But your beating didn't teach me a lesson.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't tell me where to go from there.
Yeah.
You just said, don't do it again. But that's what I'm doing. You're not showing me any different. And I'll tell you that this is he didn't lead by example.
Yeah. That's what I was going to say.
Dad. Yeah, my dad dropped out of high school.
Yeah.
And he joined the Army. And for him, I believe, knowing his circumstances, I believe that was a good decision for him. Because I'll be the first to tell you, as you'll learn later in my story, I do not like classrooms. I love to learn. I love to plan. I love to grow. I love to develop. I am passionate about not being the person I was yesterday. I'm in love with the idea that there is a different Mike at the finish line, clapping his hands, cheering me on.
Mm-hmm.
But, my dad didn't change who he was. He just changed his expectations. They just continued to grow, and I didn't grow with him because he didn't show me by any example of how to do that.
Yeah.
But he did show me how to work hard, and I'll tell you, as we move on to my Marine Corps journey, that came into play a lot. Yep. That was a huge factor in someone who did understand how to guide and lead me by example. His work ethic was going to pay huge dividends in my future. Mm-hmm. And so there was an investment made in that relationship.
Yeah, I like that, and I've never thought about it that way, which I am not a father, so I've never had to really work through these, these processes of raising children and correcting them properly in my own life. I've never faced that challenge before, but, I've never thought about it that way of how, every generation, like you said, it's not that you as a parent should the expectation of the child, the expectations you have for your child shouldn't be lowered, but your awareness of the world that child's growing up in, it's change. You need to be aware of what they're dealing with and how it's so much different than, even me, man, growing up. Yeah. Like, I mean, it's changed so much. The issues that they face have changed so much. The culture has changed so much, and having awareness of those things and I think that is really profound, man. And of course, leading by example. Essentially, That is one of the fundamentals of leadership. 100%. It's so important. So I appreciate
to get back
that.
to your, sorry to cut you off, but to get back to your original question. So where I've grown from that in my experience. So I was scared. I was very scared. Every single time one of my children was born, I was scared because God, don't let me fail at this. God, let me get this right. Mm-hmm. God, let me make it hurt a little bit less. Because I know that I'm going to bring a lot of the behaviors, whether I practice them or not, those behaviors are in me. They're there. They're instilled. It was a part of my upbringing. So It's in my DNA, right? But I'll tell you, pain, like in your words, we don't give it a name, right?
Yeah.
But we never allow it to stop teaching us where we want to go and where we don't. And so that fear and that pain of maybe getting it wrong motivated me and inspired me to go and find some answers. Maybe they weren't traditional, hey, here's a book, or, listening to a podcast or anything like that. But you know what? I went looking for men in my life that I felt had done a great job. And I went and asked them questions, or I went and, searched the internet for inspiring stories of, amazing people that had amazing fathers and father-son and father-daughter relationships. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's so many resources. There's so many people out there that did get it right. I mean, maybe they're not outnumbered by those who got it wrong, but they're there and they're available. One thing I remember specific, about Tiger Woods and his relationship with his father. Cause, I think everybody that, knows of him and his father, that was a very, very special relationship, not only in the way that he developed his skills as an athlete, but just the way that his competitiveness and his respect for his father kind of shined as a light, to the public eye. And one thing he spoke about whenever he was asked about, his interactions with his father is even when his father disciplined him, he always got down on one knee and looked him in the eye, and he came down to his level.
Mm-hmm.
And what's funny about that is that while it doesn't seem like, it seems like the baby thing to do, like you would do that with a toddler. Hey, stop acting up. Think about yourself in whatever leadership capacity you're in right now, and how many times was it earth-shattering when either you as a leader or a leader that you were under came down to your level and shared that space with you, looked eye to eye and said, we can do better.
Yeah.
Or, hey, let's do this together. I can't tell you how many times I've been on a treadmill next to a young person who was just fired up about making a difference in their life, and how they really sought out change because they knew they weren't doing it alone.
Yep. And I think too that you're talking about that simple principle, and that's an actionable takeaway for any fathers or mothers listening to this podcast. I mean, that's really, really something you can implement right now. And I think it takes it almost from a level of potentially being a bully almost. I mean, as the leader of your family, because there are plenty of fathers and mothers out there that are bullies, and taking it from that to really being more of a mentor, and like you said, more of a real, true leader, and leading by example. Just that simple act of getting down in that moment that you have to implement that discipline, getting down on that young person's level. I can only imagine how that would change the perspective and change the, I guess, lesson that you're trying to get across to them, man. I love that. I'm so glad you shared that with us, man.
Yeah. I can remember so many friendships, in my past, and interactions I've had with, just important things happening in people's lives. And there's never been a time where I was having an important discussion, a really heart to heart, on helping someone through change or challenge, or, some kind of pressure in their life, and I wasn't looking them in the eye.
Mm-hmm.
Why would I treat my children any different?
Solid, brother.
So if you're a parent, you have to make yourself available. You're here. You made the decision. That child is here. And you have to come to the realization that if you don't see the problem with your child, then you might be the problem with your child. And that's hard, because just as much as we stand in our own way, sometimes we do that with our family.
Yep. Solid word, brother. I love it. That really, really clarified that question, and my perspective is much better than it was 10 minutes ago. So I love it, brother. And I want you now to carry on, man, through walk us through. I know, dude, you spent 20 years in the Marine Corps. I know you've got a million stories.
You're gonna have to guide this ship.
Yeah, man. I just want you to kind of walk us through first. When you first got there, when you first got to basic training or boot camp, whatever you call it, that had to have been a big shift from you, coming from that, I guess, no structure, no leadership, no direction. All of a sudden, boom, you're in the midst of this brotherhood that has all of those ingredients that you weren't used to, and maybe you were yearning for them, and how that kind of affected you, man, and what was your experience with that?
Yeah, well, let me first off tell you a little bit more personal reason why I joined the Marine Corps. So a lot of people think that, a guy in a pretty suit walked in a classroom and all of a sudden my mind was changed. That seed was planted with some other circumstances in mind. And I don't mean to badmouth another service. I mean, we all have our interactions that are, funny between the, inter-service conflicts and whatnot that are fun. But my personal story, and I don't think anything bad on the Army, but this is just the way that it happened in my family tree and the way that I made my decision. But, I knew the story of my grandfather and his service, and I thought it was really cool that he served in the Army, but I didn't know anything about his service or had any interactions with him. All I knew is that he served in the Army. He came home. He became a plumber, and he was not such a great example.
That's how it was back in that generation. No, man, it's changed so much. So yeah,
absolutely, for sure. And I don't mean to speak. I don't even mean to speak about the organization, because I think it has more to do with his decisions and substances than it does the organization. So that is what it is. But anyways, so I felt that the pattern repeated itself with my dad and my experience there. And this is, me trying to figure things out. This doesn't mean that I had the right answers for that time. It's just, this is how I came to my decision. So I said, I want something different. If I want something different for my family, then I've got to go and do something that no one in my family has ever done before. So if I want a different result, I have to travel down a different path. Yep. And that's exactly what I decided to do. So I thought it was even funny because I was behind in school. I was a 19-year-old senior. So 19-year-old seniors don't have to ask their parents for permission to join the armed forces. And I went out on a whim and I said, this is what I'm going to do. And my mom didn't really know that I was pursuing it that hard. My dad was kind of out of my picture. He wasn't out of the picture. He tried to be there, but I just said no. So I went and joined, signed up. And
you just real quick, Mike, you
yep.
You just answered one of my questions I was going to ask you without knowing it, because one thing I see in family units, and one thing that I see it's almost like generational curses, whatever you want to call them. It's those traits that you were talking about that are passed down generation to generation, from a grandfather to a father to a son, and it's like. It's interesting for me to look at those situations and say, how did this person break that? How did they break that? And you analyzed it as a young man, and it's amazing to me that you had that foresight to think, I want a different outcome for my life and my future family. So what do I have to do to break this? I have to travel down a different path. And that's really, really cool to me, man, that is what drove you to the Marine Corps. Is essentially that's what you were trying to do, is to break that generational thing of being passed down and down and down and just keep going and keep going. And finally somebody's got to break it. And you did that intentionally. That's really, really cool, man, because that was going to be one of my questions I asked, but that right there sums it up 100%. It's choosing a different path, not trying to do the exact same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, and it was funny because, I didn't, in 98, 99, like we didn't have, we never had a computer in my home. So we didn't have, Google, let's look up what the Marine Corps is. Like, I didn't even have a full picture on what it was. I had no influences other than that recruiter man who, came into my life and just kind of presented a couple of things, but I didn't even know what I was getting into. Like, a lot of guys had shown up to recruit training and were like, oh yeah, I know this, and I know these leadership principles and traits, and I know how to stand and this and that. I was like, yep, I don't know any of those things, man. I'm just here because, I heard that you guys were kicking rear end and you work really hard, and I'm hoping that some of that rubs off on me. But so, I mean, I kind of went in just educated on the legend, of just what a Marine is. And I was like, yeah, that's not what I'm used to. So I'm going to go do that. And after I signed up, and I told my mom and half my friends in my neighborhood who were, not really great influences on me either. No one believed me because they just saw a 160 pound, 6 foot kid. Like, yep, you don't do important things. You don't make changes. You don't take on challenge. And
did
it was
that
kind of
drive
funny.
you? Did that drive you, or did it discourage you?
Dude, it was funny because I was still a smoker. I was still a young smoker at the time, but there was just a time when I had some conflicts with my friends in the neighborhood, and I just had to separate myself from them. I was just like, you're not in the equation anymore. I'm shutting that down. It was the same behavior I did whenever I lost trust and kind of quit, on my dad, and I shut him down, shut him out of the picture. And we didn't even start talking until a decade later almost.
Yeah.
But I was just kind of in the place where, I needed the noise to go away. So instead of, dealing with it, I just shut it down and said, next. And then something else would, that didn't agree with my goal, I shut it down. I said, next. And so that's where I found myself saying, you know what, I'm just going to run laps around this trailer park until I feel like I've done what I'm supposed to do. And I'm just going to figure it out. And eventually, we got through high school and did that. And I shipped off to boot camp. And I'll never forget my recruiter's words as he dropped me off at MEPS that morning. He said, hey man, just keep your head low and you'll be okay. And I went in and met. I kind of looked at him funny. I got in the MEPS. We did our thing, whatever, so on and so forth. I get to boot camp. I'm in San Diego, Marine Corps Recruit Depot, San Diego, where everyone on the West Coast, all the males on the West Coast go for recruit training to become Marines. And I remember getting there, and we take the white buses from the airport. You've probably seen them. You've been through there.
Yep.
And they drop us off in the middle of the night at the depot, and then all of a sudden you got the big Smoky Bear drill instructors, pulling us off the bus and just going crazy with all the rules and the regulations and all the welcome to this and that. And you can't even understand what they're saying, but it's just chaos, right? And it was funny because I'm used to yelling. Yelling wasn't new to me in my household. I'm used to people being, in chaos and stressed out and so on and so forth. But as we were arriving there, they put us on these yellow footprints, which are right at a 45-degree angle. They're facing a couple of articles of the UCMJ. They're kind of telling you, hey, you got this new set of rules. You're in this lifestyle. You're within the confines and the responsibility of the Marine Corps. This is your left lateral limit. This is your right lateral limit. Just go where you're told to go. And this is how you conduct yourself. And while all this is going on, of course, I'm hearing it. It's still with me. And I've, relived that story for generations of Marines. But the only thing I'm thinking of while I'm sitting on those yellow footprints is, can I do this? Am I going to be good at this? Is this going to provide me with an opportunity? Is this going to really give me a trade? And is this going to change, the father or the husband or the friend or the son that I become? Is this going to do something meaningful with my life? Am I going to be able to have purpose as I walk through those doors and take on this challenge? Am I even going to make it? Am I going to survive? I'd never done anything like that. I've been around tough people, but I wasn't getting paid to be it. So it was just so much unknown. And like I said, I hadn't opened anything other than a pamphlet that they sent in the mail, on what the Marine Corps was. So I'm literally going into the unknown. And a lot of people say, well, no. In 1999, pot smoking, beer drinking, trailer park, Pearland, Texas Mike did not know what it was really to be a United States Marine.
Yeah.
Remember my GPA? Yeah, I wasn't looking for answers. I was just looking for change. And I was lucky enough that, I fell forward and put myself, I made myself available for change. And God took it from there. But once I get into boot camp, everything's chaotic. You meet your drill instructors. We got all these crazy days and nights where they're kind of keeping us up to get our sleep deprivation going and kind of get us on our heels and really start instilling discipline. So you have boot camp that's, split up into 3 days, and or 3 phases, sorry. And the first phase is the breakdown phase. They're really just trying to create turmoil, trying to break the team apart, kind of, take your feet out from under you so that they can teach you what they want, because you pay attention when chaos is happening. And what was insane to me is that while all this is going on and all this chaos and spits flying and, barracks rooms are getting turned upside down and everybody's just trying to, I have this realization. I was like, everything that these gentlemen are saying to me is encouraging. There's not one bad thing that's coming out of their screaming mouths. Like veins are popping out of everywhere in their, above the shoulders. But I haven't heard anyone say a bad thing to me. They said, straighten up, tighten up, get louder, get hard, get faster, do it again, repeat yourself, get online. Like everything they tried to stress me out with was positive reinforcement. They stressed me out with positive reinforcement.
Wow.
So for you moms and dads out there that are thinking that, yes, the Marine Corps is brainwashing your child, absolutely. If you think about why you throw clothes in the washing machine, it's to rinse the dirt and get a better product.
That's the
That's
truth,
what they're
man.
doing. Bad habits have got to go. If you're going to make a difference in the world, you have got to let something go. Why not the bad habits? Why not take them to a place where they can't have their cell phone? They can't have their friends whispering what their next step should be in their ear, or how cool they need to be, or what videos they need to post in order to be important people. Just let them go, be themselves, minus their influences, and watch what they learn and watch how they grow.
That's pretty cool how your lens flipped on that. You know, you talking about you finally heard those words and you had that realization that there's not a single bad thing coming out of their mouth. They're actually just trying to push me to become a better human being and a stronger man. And and I think it's also pretty cool how you mentioned that first phase is that breaking you down phase. And
Yeah.
dude, I mean that's a principle straight out of the Bible. God works the same way. He really can't do nothing with us until we get broken down, and he doesn't break us down. Like, you know, life happens and we make bad decisions, and when we try to live apart from him, a lot of times we make very poor decisions and life breaks us down. And when we get to the rock bottom, that's when he can really work on us, man. And maybe not
Yep.
even rock bottom, but you've got to be craving. You got to get to a point that you're craving for something more than what you've had or what you're finding in life in that moment. And I think that's another really cool principle of nature. And I think the Marine Corps may have took that strategy straight out of the Bible, man.
I totally agree with you. I can say over my years, I've heard a lot of preachers who have been great friends, and I've heard a lot of preachers preach on one point: die to yourself.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
when you say pick up your cross, that means it's, you know, your needs, your desires, they fall to the back seat,
yeah,
and you let someone else drive. And it's got to be somebody, you know, who can conquer death, and who better, right?
yeah.
Um, but yeah, you know, so as we go through the phases of boot camp and we're getting challenged, they have a thing called incentive training, IT, right? And this is where you see the videos of drill instructors exercising individual recruits, or like little packs of recruits at a time, and they're just destroying them, right? They're just giving them little 3 minutes of a, 153, heart rate. But they're basically just, listen, pain retains, but they're also at the same time making them memorize the things they're supposed to memorize, making them say the cadences they're supposed to. They're actually teaching. They're actually, while they're punishing them, right, with these, crazy exercises, they're instilling the thing that they're supposed to be teaching them. How do you say yes, sir? How do you communicate better? How do you, what did you get wrong?
Mm-hmm.
How are you supposed to get it right? And they do it through all these crazy techniques that they've, developed over so many years. And I'll tell you, it's been an amazing process. I can still tell you how to go to the bathroom in boot camp, and nobody on, listening would know other than a Marine. And they just probably, just hold the beer in the air and laugh at it. But,
I want to ask you too, Mike, while we're on kind of the topic of Marine Corps training.
mhm.
Do you think? I mean, that was back in the '90s, man. I mean, it's been quite a while ago now.
Yep.
Society's changed quite a bit. Do you feel like um, the standards have been compromised or the standards have changed throughout the years? Is that something that you've considered or something that's crossed your mind? Because, that's something that I think about, not all the time, but every now and then it crosses my mind that, even the standards at Buds, not that Buds isn't hard today, but it's just like, I wonder what it's like today. Have you seen that? Have you heard of that? And what's your take on that, brother?
Yeah. So halfway through my career, I spent 3 years as a recruiter, and
Okay.
I got a chance to go down to the depot, and yeah, I've always when I was stationed, not in Texas, I spent half my career on the West Coast, so I was close to San Diego, went down there a lot, and but even halfway through my career and towards the end, I spent many trips down there, and I've had so many friends that are Marine Corps drill instructors, and that have gone in and out of that duty, and I'll tell you what, they're still making Marines. It's still 13 weeks to become a Marine, and you still have to earn it. You don't get it until you walk off that parade deck on the last day. You don't get to hold the title until your drill instructor gives you that Eagle Globe and anchor, and he thanks you for becoming his brother or his sister or her sister, a United States Marine. It's still earned. You still go down to the depot. You still get worn out like everyone else, and you're going to get taught the same basic leadership principles and traits and characteristics as all of us did. The training is going to is going to change. It's going to evolve, and there are going to be those that say, "Oh, it's easier." They're fighting a different war than you fought. I don't want to be trained like a World War I or a World War II Marine because my war doesn't look like theirs.
Yep.
So I hope that it changes, because if our warriors don't change and our battles do, then our victories are going to change.
Yep.
And they haven't. The standard has been changed. I know that the Marine Corps has implemented, greater physical fitness and combat fitness standards with, the introduction of the Marine Corps martial arts program. We call it McMAP. But also we used to only run a physical fitness test. Now we run a combat fitness test where we're being tested on, aerobic strength and anaerobics, exercises. Everything has changed. Marksmanship has, gone through the roof. I mean, you know that from your time as a SEAL. I mean, when we got, generations invested into, the war on terror, I mean, you learn new things. And I'm thankful that, the lessons learned throughout that conflict have been implemented into making our training better and better equipping our troops to take, get onto the battlefield.
Yeah, that's a great perspective to have on it, man. And you're exactly right. And I almost feel like the longer time, the more time goes on, the more educated, the smarter, the more technologically advanced candidates become, and SEAL candidates for that matter. So then at that point, it's like you say, the training needs to adapt to accommodate almost the higher mental capacity, and you can actually build a more efficient machine if you can adapt that training. And it necessarily doesn't involve beating the candidate into the dirt quite as hard as we did 10, 20, 15 years ago. But you're producing a better product by adapting the training either to the environment downrange or to the candidate the average candidate that you're seeing come through the pipeline as that changes and shifts from generation to generation. So that's a great perspective on that, brother. I just had to hit you with that question.
No, I appreciate it. I'm glad to share it.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. All right, talk to me. What did it feel like to graduate?
Man, I cried a lot. And first and foremost, so we had this one evening. It's called DI dinner night, something they don't really do anymore. But so our families that were visiting would get to go down to the end of the depot, and there'd be some floodlights or whatever kind of over this field that, this grassy area that led up to that. And we would get in our platoons and we would march singing cadence, some of the best cadences our drill instructors would love to sing with us, right? And it was kind of a motivation, like just putting our spirits straight up into our chest, man. All of our being was in our chest. We were putting our feet down hard. We were leaning back. We were just sounding like a unit. We were singing these really cool, traditional cadences. And I'll never forget, we literally marched into the light where our families would see us for the first time since we'd become United States Marines. And they had our platoon flags marked out, so where we were going to go, our family members could see where we were going to be. I was marching up as a squad leader. I remember it very vividly.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was no longer that kid. I felt like when my younger brothers saw me coming in their direction, I felt like they saw the brother that I was supposed to be.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Um, that's how much it still means over 20 years later.
Yeah, that goes back to that leadership by example, man.
Yeah.
I mean, that's powerful, brother.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, there were great conversations had that night. My granny, my mom's mom, I blame my stubborn, hardcore character on her. She was just the go-getter of the family, and I got every bit of it from her. And if I travel off the beaten path, it's because there was a 72-year-old woman still mowing her own easement with a push mower. But you know, to see her and my mom and my brothers there, only the tears, that I just shed can really describe it, because it was just the first time that I would answer that kid that was on the yellow footprints with all those unanswered questions. And I continued throughout my 20 years to teach lessons based on that same experience, and every experience since then. Anytime I had an encounter with, if I was given the floor to talk, which is basically how I got on your podcast, right? Would anybody like to speak up? Does anybody have anything to say on the podcast?
Takes courage, man. That says speaks volumes about the type of man that you are, man.
Yeah. I'm if anybody who knows me and knows me well, I'm never going to give up an opportunity to speak and try and make an impact where I can in the world. But yeah. So, and I still believe, even beyond retirement, that having become a Marine and learned things that I did and interacted with the amazing people, and especially a lot of the challenging people that I did in that organization, I'm still responsible to the people that I taught those lessons and shared those experiences with, to answer that kid's call to get those things done.
Well, I'll tell you what, Mike, that story that you just told right there of kind of how, that you walked us through, that feeling of being that person at graduation, marching in there as a squad leader, not only as a graduate, but as a squad leader, and having that sense of leadership by example for the first time in your life. And I know that doesn't sum it all up, but it sounds like to me that moment in and of itself is probably makes the whole 20 years of service worth it for that single moment, man. Because I mean, how many times there's not a lot of people that get to have that feeling on that level as a man, as a leader. I had a guy call me the other day, brother, and he was talking to me about going to, he wanted to be a SEAL, and he had all these, 1,000 questions about what's going to happen to my wife, and what's going to happen this, and what's my day going to be like, and, the 1,000 questions. And your story sums it all up. It sums up essentially the advice that I left him with. I said, look, man, if this is on your heart, if you're considering this for real, and you're not just wasting my time, go and just do it, man. Yep. You commit 6 years of your life. If that's all you want to do, it's only 6 years. You're only 20, you're in your early 20s. It's a 6-year commitment, and there's nowhere else that I know of. There's nothing else that you can do as a young man in life that's going to give you that feeling that you just described, Mike. There's nowhere else that you can go that within 6 years is going to give you the amount of credibility that you're going to have when you come out. There's nowhere else that's going to teach you the amount of discipline, teamwork. You're going to be light years ahead. In 6 years, you're going to get 60 years of lessons, and
Absolutely. Yeah,
it's like,
I agree with you.
That story that you just did, that moment and that feeling and that experience that you got to have there at graduation, I mean, that's worth a lot, man. So, that's the best advice I can give for people that are searching this out in their own head. Is this the path they want to walk? It's just like, just launch, man. Just do it, man. So that's awesome, brother.
Make yourself available. Whatever your goal is, if you have to make yourself available.
100%, brother.
And I'll tell you, so that experience definitely, obviously planted a very, deep seed in me. And that went on. So there was also something going on there where, as a squad leader, I don't remember, I got onto some recruit for something right before graduation time. And so I don't remember what it was, but I didn't earn the meritorious promotion that was supposed to come with that. And I remember we were down in the butts by for final firing qualification. And I'll never forget, my drill instructor said, "Hey, the old man, senior drill instructor, he's not going to be able to give you that meritorious promotion because of, what went down with you and recruit so-and-so. But you still get, the position to march on drill day or whatever for the ceremony."
Yep.
So I was like, all right, that's all right. And so they both looked at me. I'll never forget. Drill instructor Staff Sergeant Harrelson and drill instructors Staff Sergeant Huckabee, both right there. And I'm just sitting there, just being intimidated. But, they said, so what's your plan? What are you going to do now? What are you going to do? Like, you didn't get your promotion. What are you going to do? And I said, I just looked at him and I didn't even hesitate. I said, I'm going to go to Marine combat training. I'm going to get that promotion. And, so the next phase after recruit training is you take a little bit of time off, usually, to get a little R&R with your family or whatever, and everybody gets to cheer on the Marine or whatever. And then if you're in a combat MOS, you go on to the School of Infantry for your, primary school and education. And then if you're not in a direct combat MOS, you still go to the School of Infantry, but you take a course on Marine combat training. So that everyone knows every single Marine is basically qualified as an infantryman. That doesn't mean that we're a grunt or an operator or that we can go do a lot of very special and very precise, things in combat that they do. But if someone shoots at us, we know how to shoot back at them.
That's it.
If someone, knows how, to get a hold of us, we know how to reach out and return the favor, so to speak.
Yeah, and you got a basic understanding of probably small unit tactics and enough to, like you said, to be able to be an effective fighting force. That's pretty cool that the entire Marine Corps as a whole unit has that level of training, man, because that's definitely not the truth in the Navy. Definitely not true in the Navy, man.
Yeah, I mean, or any other organization. I mean, our entire organization does marksmanship, like weeks and weeks of marksmanship, and then we have to revisit those qualifications every single year. Every single Marine goes to the range. We go to the gas chamber. We physical fitness tests, combat fitness tests, practicing our skills and our traditions and customs and courtesies and all those things. We revisit our history every single year. It's ingrained in the culture. It's something that's alive. But anyway, so I get to combat training. It's a lot of tough work. It's a lot of mountains out there in Camp Pendleton, and definitely not something I'm used to from the south side of Houston for sure.
Yep.
But I get out there, I get camouflage on, carrying heavy packs and ammo and guns and all that. And not a lot of people want to do that, but I found my calling just for that period of time, and it was just to be a good squad leader and fire team leader and do whatever I could with the time. So apparently my effort paid off because my combat instructors awarded me with a meritorious private first class promotion upon graduation there. And that was just, another beginning of, just another domino. Hey, Mike's making calls and Mike's getting what he wants. And I was just glad to be in an organization that was fostering that kind of behavior in me and using my grit and my work ethic to help me get ahead.
Yep. That's awesome, brother. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Man, and dude, you've got so much time in service, and like, there's so much that I want to ask you. Cause I'm looking at your bio right now, and the next date I see is 2002.
Yep.
And, I know there had to been a lot happen between then, between the story you just left off with and 2002, because what happened? September 11th, right? I mean, it's a game changer, dude. And, it's like, feel free, if there's something there, feel free to share that and lead us up to that story there in 2002 brother.
Absolutely. So, September 11th happened, and I'm still the guy. I learned my technical trade. I was an avionics technician throughout my career. Worked in aviation logistics, operations, avionics, basically repairing electronic components and stuff on gadgets on airplanes. For the general audience. That's what I did. So, the crazy dumb kid that didn't want to sit in a classroom, with a Marine Corps instructor and a Navy instructor, he got really good at paying attention and doing his homework. So made my way through a very technical MOS and qualified as quality assurance inspector, all those crazy things. September 11 happens, and I'm still that guy. I'm working night crew when, so I'm sleeping during the day whenever, the tower's being hit with the planes on that morning. And I never forget my mom calling me, and then, I tell her, oh, hold on, I got to figure out what's going on. I turn on the TV, I see what's going on. I still can't process it. Mm-hmm. And then I get a call from one of my good buddies and sergeants, Sergeant Mark Bisbee. Hope you listen to this, dude. Love you, man. But he calls me. He says, hey, so all of us sergeants and staff NCOs, senior leaders in our shop, basically come to an agreement. You're the guy we want holding a weapon and helping guard the base because everything's being shut down. And I'm like, oh, okay, this thing's real. So he basically said, we know you're tired, but you need to get dressed. You need to go check in with the sergeant major at headquarters. So I went and did that. We got our briefs, and I was a member of the interior guard for my unit. And we basically had roving posts, basically 4 on, 8 off. We're only allowed to go to the chow hall, to our post, and to our room, no exception. Mm-hmm. So if you need to buy chips, you're going to have to phone a friend or get the duty to go and do it for you. But you're exclusively assigned to these 3 areas, and you're on call all the time. So we were basically 4 on, 8 off for 2 weeks until, the threat conditions kind of changed and we got used to what security on a base was going to be like at that time. So anyways, so I'm still the guy. I'm still the guy that people go to whenever, they want, something to happen, which I was very proud to have those responsibilities placed in my hands. And I've done it in several other things along the way since then. But one thing that I did start to revisit is I started to revisit, the whole partying aspect of my life, that I grew up with. And I kind of didn't really escape because I was a young man and I was a bachelor. I was out in the world and I'm living an exciting life, in a place that I never dreamt I would be, San Diego. And, I'm a Marine. So at this point, I'm accomplishing things, but I've become a little more bulletproof, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And, that culture is probably not all that great for someone, with that kind of history, but it can be if you're cognizant of the changes you're trying to make. And I'll definitely say that, like I said, I'm just a normal guy. I fall to influence. I'm no different than anyone else. I see something that's fun and want to have a good time, and you let loose and you do those things. And I did. I found myself in 2002. It was at the end of June. NBA playoffs were going on. I remember that specifically. And me and the boys were going to go out. We were going to go down to some bar down by the beach in San Diego. And I wanted one of our friends, my buddy Matt, I'm not going to use last names, but one of our buddies, Matt, there in the barracks. I was like, hey, man, I want Matt to come with us. Let me go see if he's available to ride down there and go watch the games with us. And they're like, well, okay, go ahead. So I went and got him, and I was like, asked him, and Matt's like, man, I ain't got any clothes. I still got to wash everything. Dude, let me give you one of my shirts, one of my jeans, throw on some sandals in San Diego. Let's go. So I get Matt in the car. We make it down to San Diego. We're down by the beach. We're watching the games. And as the games are kind of ending in the late afternoon, because we were there for lunch and into the evening, the bar kind of shuts down as just a regular social environment, kind of turns into a club at night. And so it turns into a big college beach party scene. And as that's happening, we start getting drinks. Drinks start getting heavier. They start getting more frequent. Eventually, I don't know how many tequila shots into the evening, but me and a couple of my buddies, we just start acting up. And we're not fighting or, being crazy. We're just being a nuisance to the general public there in the establishment. And so we get asked to leave, and so a lot of the story is told to me because at this point I don't remember all of it. So This was pieced together by things that happened afterwards, but revisiting the situation. But So we get asked to leave. We get escorted, out to the, sidewalk, and then we make our way back to the car. My buddy Patrick was the one that drove us down there, and he was going to take me and Matt back to the base. And Matt and I were both tarnished pretty good in alcohol. And I know I was kind of blacked out at that point. I don't know how he was. I imagine so, because we were buddies side by side, putting him down. And so Patrick drives. He was a designated driver that night, so he was able to, get us back to base, or heading back to base. So we start heading back on Highway 52 from the coast, and it's a road that kind of takes you all the way across San Diego if you want to, but it takes us back to MCAS Miramar. Well, it's in the middle of the night, probably 2, 3 in the morning, and Matt and I start wrestling in the car for I don't know what reason. Maybe one of us wanted to ride shotgun. I mean, what does anyone have a reason for when you're drunk, right?
I heard that, brother.
So, but we're both very well in our prime as young men. We're both very strong and very, we're alpha males. So whatever we do, Patrick cannot, I remember him telling me he could not continue to drive with us acting the way we were. If so, we definitely weren't going to make it through, the gate at the base.
Yep.
Not without going to jail or getting into major trouble. So anyways, so he pulls over. He's like, you guys got to figure this out, right? Because he's just trying to get us home safe. And so he pulls over, and Matt and I immediately get out and start to wrestle or whatever. And where Patrick pulls off is there's like a barrier, and then over that barrier of the highway, I don't know the grade. I don't even know how to describe it. If any human being listening to this, look down the grade of that side of the highway, mm-hmm. you would back away from it. It was that steep. Yep. It wasn't straight down, but it wasn't far from it. I'd probably say like 7 or 8% grade. Yep. So anyway, we end up wrestling, and we go over that side. We wrestle over it. And when we go, all I remember in my, drunkenness is I remember the tumbling. Like I felt like I was inside of a big barrel and someone was just shaking it really, really hard. Mm-hmm. There was no significant pain or anything. It just felt like just chaos, right? And I remember kind of when it stopped, I was trying to get up, trying to figure myself out. And apparently Matt, when we came to the bottom of it, with whatever light was available, Matt, I think, was freaked out at this point. I was much bigger than him. But I guess he was between me and trying to get back up to the car, I think. I guess he was threatened by that. And so apparently, according to all of our stories, he punched me a couple of times to try to keep me down on the ground because he thought I was coming after him, which I could totally understand that, right? Yeah. The state that we were in. I mean, who knows what's going on? And eventually, I make myself back up to all fours and back up for a second. So before the Marine Corps, I was under the impression that Matt was into kickboxing before he joined the Marine Corps. That now comes into play. So I got up on all fours, and with his bare feet, Matt punts me right in the face, right at the top of the bridge of my nose. And he opens up what comes to be a quarter-size gash at the top of the bridge of my nose. If you see my humongous nose right now, it's all put together with plastic pieces. Thankfully, I was rushed to back up and get this. So I see a flash of light. I fall back, and then I immediately scramble. And I remember just trying to get away from whatever just tried to harm me. Mm-hmm. And I can kind of remember coming to a fence, kind of moving over it. What I would later find out is that was a barbed wire fence that I had gotten to, and I threw myself over it, and I basically shred my torso and my legs all the way down, tore all my clothes into, fibers. Yeah. And then I had eventually went and found some bushes to hide in, which apparently was a big batch of poison oak, come to find out.
Bad night, brother. Holy smokes.
So we're getting there. And I can remember someone like screaming my name. And what it was Patrick had come down there after he had seen Matt go back up to the road covered in my blood. And in the clothes that I had lent him that night, that's where that becomes important. And they freaked out. And so he was like, we got to go find him. We got to, do this and that. And they were calling my name. And in my mind at that time, I'm trying to hide from that voice, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so they're like, he's not coming out. Like, we're not going to find him. It's all pitch black. Nobody has a light or anything to find me in the darkness down there. And so they get in the car, they go back, and I don't know if they went to the duty or if they called the sergeant or who they called, but they went and let people know after they had ditched the clothes, that that Matt was wearing, because I guess they didn't want to give whatever impression. But so eventually I somehow, while they're out doing that or whatever they're doing at the base, I had somehow, I don't know how I did this, but I had somehow made it back up to the street. And a CHP officer, California Highway Patrol officer, found me lying on the side of Highway 52 and had, radioed in an ambulance and had me sent in to, thankfully, probably one of the best, surgeons I could have possibly gotten. I was at a hospital in La Jolla,
Mm-hmm.
California, which if you're going to get in trouble physically, do it in La Jolla.
Yeah.
But I recommend strongly against getting in this kind of trouble. So anyways, I spent 2 to 3 days in an intensive care unit with, things helping me breathe, because basically what had happened is my entire orbital region on both my eyes was completely fractured.
Wow.
So the human nose is only supposed to be about 7 pieces of cartilage. Mine's forever in 26 pieces.
Wow.
I had both my eyes, and my face was so swelled up that friends that came and visit me in the hospital either broke down in tears or had to leave the room before they vomited. My eyes were completely black. The white of my eyes was completely full of blood. But thankfully, none of my cornea or no permanent damage was done there. My sinuses in my forehead were crushed and full, basically swollen closed and full of blood. I'd be bleeding out of my sinuses for probably the next 90 days as they were healing. They had to put stents in there. Then there was also the poison oak that got into all my open wounds as I was laying in the grass down there. And then whenever I came to out of that ordeal in the hospital there, come to find out I'm allergic to codeine. So the stuff they tried to pump me with to take my pain away made my body turn purple and break out in hives,
man.
which only added to the poison oak that was already flowing through my body.
Hey, Mike, adjust your mic up just a little bit, brother.
Oh, sorry about that.
No worries. Gotcha.
But so yeah, if things couldn't get any worse, then after that whole stint, my mom and my middle brother come out to visit me in the hospital, and I basically just crumble in the sorrow of my decision making. After they eventually leave, and everybody kind of leaves me on my own thing, I'm put on convalescent leave, which is basically for those that don't know, it's kind of a medical leave where the military will give you basically time to yourself so you can heal. So if you have a broken arm, or something, they'll give you time away from work, and they do it medically with convalescent leave so that work can't interfere and you actually get the time to heal. It's a great system for those of us in the service, and I just want to make sure I clarify what that is. But in my time and day, cell phones didn't talk to you, and they didn't have Google searches. And so I had some DVDs in my barracks room for 30 days of convalescent leave, where I basically just got bored with movies, and I'd stare at my broken face in a mirror for about 30 days. So it was a pretty good prison sentence, if you want to call it that, because I had nothing but time to reflect on my decisions and what led me to that. But a very special thing occurred during that 30 days of convalescent leave. I'll never forget, I was coming towards the end of it. It was he had been given some kind of restraining order or something. Matt had, excuse me, but he broke it, and he went and grabbed the duty, and the duty NCO escorted him up. I don't know why they did. They was instructed not to, but they did. And I'll never forget Matt, when that door opened, I looked at him, and I locked eyes with him, and we didn't say, he tried to, I like the moment his lips moved, he tried to say, "I'm sorry." And we walked toward each other, and I just grabbed him. And I told him I forgave him.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't, over those 30 days, the only thing I realized about all of that pain, all of that suffering, all of that unnecessary chaos was that I put myself there.
Mm-hmm. Ownership. Yeah.
And I had given myself an opportunity, like you said, to own that before he had the opportunity to own it.
Yep. Yep.
And that was a really, really important step, because that wasn't the thing with my dad where I had years to get away from it. I mean, this was my brother. I joined the Marine Corps to be with guys like this. I put my shirt and my pants on this guy to go out with us because he was a special friend, and I wanted him to be out there living life with me. I put him in those clothes, and I put him in that situation.
Yep.
And I put those drinks in our hands, and I created that night. And a lot of people say, well, you're in the Marines and y'all were born in a bar and it's a drinking culture and this and that. Every single individual is responsible for their circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to own it. And I was thankful that I had that time alone. I had that time away from influences and people's opinions of what happened and their perspectives. And I got to just evaluate what I was doing and the results I was receiving. What investments was I making and what results was I receiving? And to find where I can correct the gaps in all of that was probably one of the most special things I've ever taken away, because after that moment, of course, I stepped away from alcohol use for probably the better part of a decade. And, I got to go on a deployment, which is where I met my wife. But, that was just an incredible experience where I made myself available to forgiveness and grace based on the decisions that I understood that I made. And I was able to get back to answering that kid on the yellow footprints, because I made the decisions to get away from it.
Yep.
But it was my responsibility to get back to it as well.
Did you have you ever or during that time, did you see complacency at all playing into that situation leading up to that night and that whole scenario? Because I know, like you were talking about, you had achieved so much. You were that guy that everybody looked up to, depended on, and a lot of times success and a lot of times victory, or whatever you want to call it. In my own life, I've seen it lead to complacency. Did you notice it, or have you ever attributed any of that to being complacent as an achiever? You know what I mean?
Dude, I'm gonna blow your mind right now. The weekend before this incident, I was getting drunk at a party with my friends that I worked with, and we had purposefully gave someone our keys and had them hide them. That night at that party, I found those keys. I got in my 1990 300ZX, went on the side of a California road, put it in park on the shoulder. I was in a safe place, but I was under the influence. Mm-hmm. And I fell asleep with it in park and my foot on the gas, and I blew the bottom out of my engine.
Holy smokes, man.
And wow. So when my buddy that next weekend asked me to go out and watch the game with him, you know what my answer was? Well, at least I can't drink and drive.
Wow.
That's how I got in that situation.
Yep.
Dude, you knew it was coming. Complacency is always the ingredient to our decision making.
Yeah, and I feel like we're in the most danger of that complacency when we're performing at a high level, and maybe a lot of people, maybe that doesn't make a lot of sense to a lot of people, but I know most of the mistakes that I made throughout my career as a SEAL or in life in general, whether it's mistakes I've made in my marriage or in my job or whatever it is, it was during those times that I was either running and gunning or business was good and I'm performing at a high level and everything's going great, and then that's when that complacency sneaks up on you, man. I could see, especially the position that you held within your team, as being that guy that everybody looks up to, how that could have, played into definitely what you experienced with that whole situation, man.
Yep.
That's awesome.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's awesome. So, man, what a powerful story and a powerful time to that 30 days that you spent in there healing And I love to hear how you utilize that instead of sitting in there and just pouting about the circumstance. And, you actually utilize that time to reflect and change the things that you were doing that were leading you down the path that you were going. I mean, that again, everything that you do, everything that you've explained to us, Mike, I think it all ties into initiative, man. A certain aspect of it is you've taken initiative throughout every portion of your life, of your adult life. And, that, again, that initiative goes back to not only breaking those kind of generational bad habits that you were susceptible to, but that initiative has now led you to be the man that you are today and allowed you to serve your country for 20 years, man. I mean, that's a huge, huge accomplishment. But I just see that as a common thread throughout everything that you've talked about here today, is you taking that initiative to utilize the time that you had to make the best of it and to get back going the direction that you want to go, man. That's so important, man. Initiative. It's that initiative is different than waiting for somebody to tell you what to do, or waiting for somebody to tell you what decision you should make, or waiting for somebody to tell you what the best direction to go is. It's not, that doesn't take initiative. Initiative is you figuring it out and utilizing the time as best as you possibly can, man. I've seen that as a common thread.
Yep. Yeah. So after that, I mean, it was time to, I just think it's funny when people say when life kicks you in the face, because I'm in the back of the room just laughing inside my own head. And I'll tell you, when that happened, during those 30 days, I found out what I was capable of. And I mean that in a very negative way. And I found out what I'm not capable of in a very real way.
Yep.
And none of what I had accomplished in making those friends or, making those decisions had anything to do with why I had become a Marine. And that was the one thing that I had circled around for those 30 days is, here you are, with no answers to any of your questions.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what are you going to do about it? Now, it's always, it was always something that was very questionable, like a challenge when other people asked me, but it became very surreal whenever I started asking myself that question. And so from there, after I healed up and kind of basically I had to prove to everyone around me that I'm not the guy that went into that hospital. I'm not the guy that trashed his car, based on getting intoxicated.
Yep.
And after this incident, the Marine Corps put me into a program. They said, hey, you're going to go be evaluated to see if you're, physically dependent on alcohol. And I'm glad that they did that, because when I sat down with the counselor and we went through the evaluation, they did the blood draws and all that. And they wanted to, ask me some questions to see if, any discussions or any talk about alcohol use or anything was affecting how I was physically performing. And at the end of it, the counselor was like, listen, you're not dependent on this. I mean, the fact that you were only going hard on the weekends and then you had the discipline to not touch alcohol during the work week, he's like, you're one of the very few that, I've ever had this conversation with. But I am glad to tell you that, you don't have a physical problem, but you do have a problem with wanting to impress people and wanting to, achieve, and you need to harness that. And so I definitely took that counselor, who was at the time a gunnery sergeant, who was volunteering as a substance abuse counselor in his other time. So so I took the gunny's advice, and I stepped out of his office and into my responsibilities a little different. So I went back to the shop. I told my supervisor, I was like, hey, Matt can be around me. You guys don't have to keep us on different crews and do this weird thing that we create in the shop. And it was funny because when I came back into the shop, like, no one else in the shop had known that me and my supervisors had made this agreement. And so we came in, and there's Matt. We had already reconciled and done all that process. And everybody was like, you okay? You mean get him out of here?
I was like, no, what was going to happen.
I was like, no, yeah. They didn't know if I was going to like break down or again, what was going to happen. And I still had a little bit of a broken face. Like I said, blood in my eye, and keeping stuffed in my nose and all that. So they just didn't know.
Yep.
But I was like, no, I've grown. Come on, next thing, let's do it. I mean, I'm broken, but I'm not done. So I got back to work. I was, it was convincing enough that while getting in trouble, that with the original incident had gotten me kicked off of a deployment. I told him, I was like, listen, what is it going to take for me to deploy? And I want to go on an aircraft carrier. That's why I joined the Marine Corps, to get out of here and go and do something for my country. And especially at a time where it's, post 9/11. And I did that. I was convincing enough. I changed my character, and I learned the gear that I needed to work on. I took on the responsibilities and proved that, I'm heading into something different, and it's going to have a good impact. And so they put me out on that boat, and I basically used that time. I call it alone time, even though there's 5,000 people, stuffed in this big aircraft carrier. We were out at sea for 9.5 months, from January to September of 2003.
That's a long cruise, man.
It's a long cruise. A lot of port calls, but it was still a lot of time, away from influences and away from certain lifestyles. So I was able to get out there and establish myself. And first thing I did was, even though I wasn't taking college courses, what a lot of people don't know is all of our services offer correspondence courses on all the trades and all of the things that we utilize in our business practices. So we had these things called, from the Marine Corps Institute, we just call them MCIs. They're basically distance education courses. You can learn about anything from, working on motor transportation units to logistics or warehouse keeping, you name it. I mean, if you want to learn something, there are these unbelievable amount of resources that, with college credits, that just educate you generally on the organization that you're in or in other trades, which is amazing. And not enough of the public knows about that stuff. But anyway, I get after this stuff, and I know that those things are something that I can put on my record to build up, my education page, showing the Marine Corps that, listen, I got this page 11 because I did get in trouble for being drunken disorderly conduct for that, because the investigation came to fall. I was at fault, and I owned it. So we did that. And so what it did is it made me non-promotable for 6 months. And that was that. They said, we're not going to fine you any money or take away your rank, because it's pretty clear that, your time and hooked up to machines in intensive care unit and your sustained injuries is probably punishment enough. And I'm pretty sure you don't want to do that again. So they were right.
I bet that ownership, man, and that's the thing, man, when you find yourself in these situations where you are standing in front of the man and you're in the judgment seat, how do you take the ammunition away from your judge? You own the mistake. It's like, is that freaking simple, man? Because if you take complete ownership of your mistake and you humble yourself, it takes all the power away from the man that's judging you. So I can only imagine that's a big part of the reason why you were able to move forward the way you did, brother.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll never forget, during that time out on that boat, man, think I'm already, coming up on 23 years of age, and I have to start making promises to myself. Okay, what's the next step going to look like? So I tell myself, and I'm doing a lot of prayer at this time, because I'm just in my rack, or I'm at the chow hall, or I'm in the gym. And I said, Lord, I don't know what's in store for me. I don't see a wife in my future. I don't see a family. I don't know what's coming, but I'm here and I'm ready. And that was pretty much it. And I was just digging into my Bible a little each night. And I remember some of the sailors in my shop, because we worked hand in hand with them on fixing aircraft, and they had a challenge. Hey, let's see who can go long without smoking a cigarette, this and that. And I was like, hey, that sounds like, there you go. There's a little thing. And right, so I planted that seed in my heart, and I said, hey, you know what? My birthday's March 22nd. I'm going to stop smoking on March 18th, 2003. And if I can forever not smoke, then I will have kept that birthday promise to myself. And I just started making promises to myself. And I had started achieving for myself, not for the glory of anyone else's, well dones or attaboys or any of that stuff. It was time for me to just start, collecting trophies and milestones for me to make me better. Because that's what I needed in my life. I didn't need an applause. I just needed to know that I was doing what I was supposed to be doing. And so from March 18th, 2003, I flicked, sorry to talk about polluting the earth, but I flicked it out into the ocean, and I haven't touched a cigarette since then. And from that point, it was funny because then I celebrated my 23rd birthday on March 22nd. And then March 27th, 2003, I get an email from this girl, Amy. And one of the sailors in my shop, his sister was in a club out at Abilene Christian University back in Texas. And some of her club sisters were at a meeting, and she started saying, hey, this war's just kicking off officially while my brother's out at sea. And there's some guys we just want to, we can get pen pals and send them some care packages and this and that. Well, I've now been married to that woman for 15 years. And we wrote back and forth to each other with a non-physical relationship, just back and forth every single day that we could. Or if I was in port, I would shoot her a call, wake her up in the middle of the night and disturb her sleep and talk her ear off. And so, here we are. I'm just like on a hunch, just talking to this girl. I had to travel halfway around the world to find a girl back in Texas. So that happens. And I find out that, she's a preacher's kid and she's a fourth generation preacher's kid. And she's there to get a Bible degree. And I mean, just all this unbelievable stuff, man. And I'm just like, I don't even know where this is coming from. I couldn't make this stuff up. A lot of people, we share our story, how we met. And I'm like, you might want to start a tape recorder or something because I'm going to sound like a World War II movie, but that's how it happened. That's just how it happened. We didn't meet at the bar or the club. We didn't walk into each other at the grocery store. It's just, I was at war, and I answered an email. And I'll tell you what, like, it was just an amazing thing because, she had been in relationships there at college, and she just happened to go to club that night and just happened to, receive a page with our emails. And we connected and we talked about real things. And the story I just shared with you, that was one thing that as our relationship was developing, I mean, just as pen pals, I was like, man, she seems like a really good friend and someone I could honestly trust based on, the conversations we're having every day. And I thought it was really important to just throw myself out there, make myself available and say, listen, if you're going to be my friend, I want you to know the worst about me. Yep. And because I saw that there was some promise as we were developing there. And sure enough, she was like, she tells me, she was like, yeah, that weighed heavy on how she saw me. But she just had the heart that's like, there's something about this guy and what has led up to him being able to share that, she trusts me and she was very interested in just continuing to develop our relationship. And, it was funny because while we were out there emailing each other, what she didn't know was that I was coming up on the end of my first contract, and I was talking to the career planner, someone who helps us develop our, the next path for the next step in our career. And I had the option of going out as a bachelor for embassy duty for my next enlistment, or I found out that there was actually a spot at the Naval Air Station Joint Reserve Base in Fort Worth, Texas. And I'm a young man who's very passionate about this girl who I'm emailing 2 hours away from, this place that I could go. And I said, you know what? I'm going to pursue this. I'm going to make myself available, even though I don't know if she's going to want to date or, have a relationship or anything in that sense. And I said, you know what? Nothing's going to happen if I don't do anything.
Ain't that the truth, brother?
So I went, and on my way driving from California to Fort Worth, I stopped by and I stayed at a hotel nearby, and she was doing finals or whatever during that semester, and she came to the door and we said hi, and it was weird, and I'd sweat every pore of my body because I felt like we were doing boot camp all over again. And we went out on a date, and it was cool. Like, everything worked out. And what was so weird is I've never known someone before I've physically met them. Mm-hmm. And I'd known this girl for the better part of a year before we even had a physical relationship, and it was so great that we got to invest in each other's hearts and minds before we get to do that. And just on a side note, I think that's something really special, Chad, about what you're doing with your podcast, because I feel like I've already known you based on your interviews with, guys like Rich Roll and things that you're doing out there with Jesse and all these other guys, and just, putting yourself out there, making yourself available.
That's so key, man. And that's been a common thread throughout, your episode here is making yourself available. And that is so key, dude. And it doesn't mean, I think that one of the biggest things I see that stops people from making themselves available is they spend too much time looking at what other people are doing, right? So, you mentioned the podcast here. It's, for me, I had no clue how to start a podcast, and and then I could you could when you go to launch off on a mission or something like on an objective like creating a podcast, if you keep looking to your left and looking to your right and you see what the guys that have been doing this for a long time and already have a huge established, platform, and how many other SEALs out there have a dang podcast? A bunch, and they're all a lot bigger than mine. And I'm like, that never mattered to me. What mattered to me was making myself available. That's it. I didn't care I wasn't going to let what everyone else was doing stop me from doing that, man. So, don't think that you have to have this massive platform or you have to have the ability to make this massive impact right off the bat. Don't let that discourage you from making yourself available, because that's where it all starts. If you don't make that decision to put yourself out there, like you said a minute ago, it's, what is the alternative? You're going to be stagnant and crouching in fear of what everyone around you is doing and accomplishing,
Absolutely.
So that's a powerful lesson, man. And that's been a standard for you definitely throughout your life. And everything starts with that decision, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to talk real quick, Mike, about, I want to talk about, and I know there's so much more packed into your career, man. I know there's got to be so much there.
We get bored.
It's like, I want to talk about that transition for you real quick into, from being, a, whatever you want to call it, a active Marine and deploying and doing your workups and your training and, being there at the team to then transitioning into that more mentorship teacher position of being a Marine Corps recruiter, which is a very prestigious position to hold there within the Marine Corps, because you guys, again, now you're the guy that's walking into the classroom, having to have that presence and having to have that, maintain that, and preserve, and live up to almost that guy that you initially saw back in the 90s, man, that walked into your classroom. That's a big transition, dude. But I know for me, a big principle of my life is if you ever want to become the master at anything, there has to be a period that you have to be willing to become the teacher or the mentor, absolutely. Right? So how was that for you, and what's the big lesson that came from that transition for you, man, in your career?
Well, first off, for those that don't know, for most Marines that are going to choose the Marine Corps as a 20 plus year career, even if you go into a second enlistment, the Marine Corps is going to, put up the fact that you have to, at some point in your career, you have to give back. So some guys will go and be like an instructor at their respective school for their trade. The other is you have to go either be a drill instructor at boot camp, or you have to be a Marine Corps recruiter or an embassy guard, or you can go be a Marine combat instructor. There's lots of other paths that maybe I don't know about or maybe didn't mention, but those are the most important ones. And when you say, it's a prestigious position, it definitely depends on who you ask. Because if you get a room full of Marines who signed up to fight wars, and, get strong and win battles and shoot guns, if you ask them, hey, who wants to go do public speaking to high school kids for 3 years, you're going to find some cowards in the room. And I say that respectively, because there are some heroes that will shy away from public speaking, but
It's the
No, it
same way in the SEAL teams, man. But
yeah,
when you look at the reality of the job that you're tasked with in that position as a recruiter, the reality of it is a very prestigious and a very important position to hold.
yep, absolutely. And it was funny because as I was coming to the decision, a lot of people that have served with me had already placed me as a drill instructor because of the way that I conducted myself and just the way that I went to work and the way that I held myself. And I was, the guy we were talking about earlier with the great haircut, and very trim. And obviously, I'm on my way to always doing big things physically and just taking it very, very personally, my responsibilities as a leader and as a Marine. So people would kind of pigeonhole me into that. And I
I'm
was
sure, yeah.
like, so what are you going to do? I was like, well, the Marine Corps says I need to go and be a recruiter. And they're like, oh, are you going to do that? And I'm like, yes, I'm absolutely going to go do it. And what was great about the opportunity that I saw in my eyes was that because a lot of people were shying away from that responsibility, they had a little bit more respect or fear for that responsibility. I saw that as an opportunity for me to get an edge on everyone. Because being if they were being held back by their fear of the unknown in that capacity, and I wasn't, I'm already winning.
Yeah.
And what a lot of folks don't know is that when you go on these special duty assignments, because of how much responsibility each of those roles entails, like you don't have a sergeant major breathing over your neck, you don't have someone telling you every little move to do. I mean, you're out there planning your day, going to your schools, making your routines, setting your appointments, doing all these things. The Marine Corps recognizes those roles and offers opportunities for meritorious promotion if you excel. Now, I didn't know if I was going to make the right relationships or right impression or do whatever I needed to do, but anyways, when it came down to it, I put myself out there for recruiting duty. And in order to get the location that you want to go to, you have to submit an application to the recruiting station that you would like to move your family to and work at. So obviously, because my wife's family at the time was living in the Fort Worth area, I said, hey, I want to go to Fort Worth. And so I submitted an application, gave them my bio, all this and that. And the sergeant major and the CO came for that period, that class, and they wanted to talk to all of us in person for if they brought us in, where they would put us at. We wanted to be up in the city, up near family, right, in Fort Worth. And so they get to everybody and they say where they're going to go and so on and so forth, and with the other candidates, and they send them out of the room. And then the CO and sergeant major hold me back, and they say, "Hey, Staff Sergeant Cabrero, we're looking at your resume, and the things that you submitted. You seem to be something very special that we're looking for. You seem to be very independent, very disciplined, very task oriented, and you seem to be very headstrong about what you tend to accomplish." And so I was like, "Yes, sir. I'm that guy. Like, what brings that up?" And they said, "Well, we have this station." And they had a station down in Killeen, Texas, that had gone through some issues, with schools and recruiters from our station that had gotten in some trouble, making some bad, basically just kind of tarnished the Marine Corps for that part of Texas. And so they had a place that they really needed someone with my energy and my tenacity. And so I looked the sergeant major in the eye and said, "Sergeant major, you just tell me what it is you need me to do, what needs to be accomplished. I'm going to make it happen." He went on to throw out, some other underlying things saying, "Well, I'm going to tell you right now, this career or this duty is either going to make or break your career." And when he put the ultimatum out there, I already knew. It wasn't a decision. I was just like, let's just move forward. Let's just put me where I need to be so I can do what I need to do. And so we went out there and I rebranded it. We were RSS Killeen. I shortened it up because I thought it looked pretty if we called it RSS Kill. And I preached to all those kids that, listen, if you have a grade that you can't make, then you're going to kill the weakness inside of you that says that you can't do that, and you're going to just go and do that. And I basically became the voice of the Marine Corps that I felt I needed to represent. I needed to speak to the kid that I was and the message that I needed to hear. And I wasn't going to walk into a classroom and let my clothes do the talking. So when I went out there on that responsibility, I understood that at that time in 2010 that I spoke on behalf of 230,000 Marines that were out there fighting the war and giving their all to the enemy. So when I walked into a classroom, I told the kids, this is not easy. And if you choose to do this, you're probably going to do it all by yourself. And a lot of people aren't going to be there to encourage you and tell you that you're doing a good job. And there's not going to be a YouTube video made about you doing this. And you know what? There's no soundtrack to showing up to work for me every day. So if this is something you want to do, stop looking to your left and your right, and you can set an appointment with me. If not, it's okay. I was afraid to do this too. And basically what I felt was necessary for high school kids was for someone like I needed to challenge them to step up and talk real to them. Because I feel that there are not enough people in a high schooler's life talking to them like the adult they're about to be. I feel like we're, like we alluded to before, like we were talking about, this generation, are we afraid of the next generation in training? Why? Why should we think about their weaknesses when we can just invest in their strengths? If their weaknesses are irrelevant, then why do we give them that attention?
Yeah.
Why don't we just train them and educate them to the things that we want them to achieve? And it was amazing because, like we said, a lot of fatherless kids out there. And you know what? I encountered a lot of young men and women who, they tried to place me, and their moms tried to place me as that father figure. I said, no. Like I had to tell my mom one time, I'm not their father. I didn't take on that responsibility. It wasn't my action.
Yep. But
I will be big brother, and I will help give you guidance and mentorship, but it's only good if you take it. Mm-hmm. And from there, we went to, listen, I'm not just going to tell you these things. I'm going to show you these things. And there were some kids that needed to lose weight, and we'd go to the gym on Fort Hood there in Fort Hood, Texas, and we'd get on the treadmills together. And I would tell them the things that I had to tell myself when I was a kid to go and get those things done. And they would lose the weight, or they would achieve the pull-ups, or we would get the push-ups or the crunches or whatever they needed to clear their mind and make themselves ready to be a Marine. And it's always funny because, a lot of people say, they become Marines, and everybody tells drill instructor stories. Like if you ever ask a Marine, like I did, what are your drill instructors' names? They all can tell you, their drill instructors' names. And I would preach to my kids. I was like, I'm sending you to boot camp to tell recruiter stories. Because I'll tell you what, if you're going to feel disappointed when you get there, because you're going to be out of shape whenever I send you. And I did, but mentally, I mean, they came back different people, more mature people. And I think that maybe I had a good opportunity to reach those kids and achieve what we did out there. Because I just started talking. I trimmed the fat from before we lit the fire. I trimmed the fat,
Yep. And what I'm hearing too, man, is essentially why that step into that teaching or mentorship role is so important, because mm-hmm. you then had the opportunity to take all of those lessons all the way back to your childhood, and you took all of those, and you had the opportunity at that point to teach them or help implement them into the lives of your students. We're going to call them students. They were your recruits at the time, but and then you see them work. And so you're not only practicing all of those principles at that point in your own life, but you're sharing them with others, and you're watching them work in others' lives, which in turn establishes the faith that you have in those tools tenfold.
More coals on the fire, man.
Yeah. If you would have kept it all to yourself, all those lessons to yourself, and you would have never put yourself in that position to become the mentor and teach, you're exactly right, man. The power of those tools in your own mind would have never been set in concrete like they are now as you share them with me on this podcast. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. That's key, man. I love it.
Well, I would, and I would love to, say that, as I finished up recruiting duty, I did what I was supposed to. We made our mission out there by component category, by what the Marine Corps assigned us to achieve for that period of time, my 36 months out there. And before I left, I was promoted meritoriously to the rank of Gunnery Sergeant. And that was a part of why I went out there, because I knew that opportunity lied. But again, I had to make myself available in a very real way to very real people who entrusted me with their lives and their futures in order to produce the results I did. And before I say that, it was 36 months of glory and awards and things, I'll tell you, the time out there came at a very real cost with some of the experiences that we shared. So I also want to quickly get into, so I had a really good couple of friends out there that were on recruiting a little bit before me. One of my friends, Matt, a different Matt this time, had been having some issues, got a diagnosis, and with that diagnosis comes some very powerful thoughts and feelings and emotions. And he was one of the people, when I was going through the process of as a candidate for meritorious promotion, he helped me take my professional photo for that board as it's evaluated. And this guy, if you knew him, Matt, looked like a superhero in a Marine uniform. Like, I don't care who you are, what capacity you're serving in any branch or anything. If you saw this guy in a uniform, you're like, that's the guy that's supposed to be on the poster. You could erase the guy on the poster and put this guy there, right?
Yeah.
He was a amateur Golden Gloves champion. Like, I mean, total, like, if you wanted to study anatomy, you just look at his body, because that guy was sculpted, right? And he was just a superhuman being. He was a great Marine, and we had known each other since that first time I was stationed in Fort Worth when I had moved there before. And so we'd gotten to know each other as sergeants, and we kind of went our own ways for different duty stations, and we came back to the same recruiting station. So I'd known this guy for like the better part of 8 years, off and on, right? We kept in touch. And after this diagnosis, so he was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. And typically from my research, I've learned that diagnosis comes with a great deal of depression and suicidal ideations. And so he was just going through a lot of things in life, and I don't need to get into that because that's no one's business, but it just took him to a very poisonous place in his mind, in his spirit. And he was going through some troubled times. And even the time that I drove up to Fort Worth to take that picture with him, he'd never really smoked. He'd always been a dipper, but he was smoking profusely when we were having our time together. And I remember asking him, I was like, just what's wrong? And he didn't get into the weeds of everything, but he was like, he just kind of broke down, and he was just sad. I'd never seen him so sad. And I could just tell that he was almost not in there. And so we were at the base, and we drove off the base, and done the picture and everything, had some lunch together, and just kind of talked about nothingness really. Then we got back to our headquarters, and he was about to get out, and I just instinctively grabbed him, and I was like, Matt, come back in here for a minute. And he's drying his tears, after we were kind of talking about things that were going on with his stuff. And I'll never forget, I said, do you mind if I just pray for you just real quick? I don't know what you believe, but can I just pray for you just for a minute? And he was like, sure. And I started praying. I said, Lord, I don't know what's on Matt's heart. I can't possibly know the details of everything that's going on in his mind, but whatever it is, let me be here for him so that you can be here for him. And if he needs something, and I knew he had a boxing back, I was like, Lord, help. He's in a corner. He's getting attacked with body shots. He's getting attacked with head shots. If I can do anything to help him keep his gloves up any longer, please, God, let me be here for my friend. And caught me off guard as I was about to say amen. He said, you mind if I do it too? And we prayed together, and he took over the prayer, and he went into that, and he kind of shared, some of the circumstances that were going on, but he wasn't telling me anymore.
Yeah.
He was talking to God, and I didn't know that was possible in him. And this is the first time I'm stepping out spiritually like this,
That's right.
Before it was emotionally with the other Matt, but this guy's, I'm seeing my friend slip away, and it just hurts that deep that prayer was the only place to go.
Yep.
And so we did that. And unfortunately, things continued on. And so I was promoted meritoriously to the rank of Gunnery Sergeant just 8 years ago, July 2nd, 2012. Matt committed suicide the night before.
Mm-hmm.
And I lost a really good friend in a really tough way. And we went through the mourning process, and we had a chaplain come in, and Chaplain Bill Appleton. If you ever want to look for a man to have on this podcast, holy smokes. He's retired since then, and he is an amazing, amazing, amazing man who is still on fire for serving service members. Just keep that note.
Will do, brother.
But so he came in and just got us through the training and all the stuff that happens after, you know, someone in the unit, you know, commits such an act. And one of our team members in my recruiting team in my substation saw us go through the mourning process, and he was already a quiet guy, Daniel, and was kind of separated from us, didn't really interact a whole lot, but he was just kind of there, just doing his job, just day to day, and nothing changed. You know, we all got our training, got our checks in the box, right? We went on with daily life, and he was just about, Daniel was just about to transition, go to his last duty station where he would just retire and finish his 20 years. But whatever circumstances were going on in life, and he had somehow followed an example. And just 31 days after Matt had committed suicide, now someone in my team who I'd spent 2 years next to recruiting committed the same action. And I tell you, after being punched in the face by life, right, or kicked in the face by life, this was a different kind of blow because it was 1-2 to the spirit.
Yeah.
And it felt like in my life, in a time that I'm supposed to be celebrating and joyful of my accomplishment, the devil's not done swinging. And to me, it felt like such a personal attack because it was a friend, and then it was a friend that I worked really closely with, and it felt like it was getting closer to my door. He was knocking on.
Yeah, right? Man.
And I'll tell you real quickly, although I went to a very deep low, the first thing when we got the news that had happened to Daniel, I grabbed my team, and we were in a parking lot of a movie theater because we had our recruits out at a movie or whatever. But I immediately got my team. I was like, hey, let's go over here in the parking lot between these two vans. And I just led us in prayer. And I said, if you're curious, this is where we go from here. And we decided right then and there that it didn't matter what happened. This was real, and we're really here. And we're going to move forward, and we're going to be strong, and we're going to be strong together. And so we went back through the process of training and just going through all of this and that. But after all that was done, then I had to go through the process of, hey, I have to go and brief all of his recruits on what happened and why he may or may not have made the decision that he made. And we had to write letters and make phone calls to the kids that Daniel had sent to boot camp and say, this is the reality of why your recruiter's not going to be here when you get back. But most importantly, I went home not knowing what to do with my emotions and my feelings. And I'll tell you, I've never been more proud to be married to the woman that I'm married to, because she knew instinctively that I needed to be showered in prayer. Because although I wasn't thinking anything dangerous, I was thinking poisonously. I wasn't like traveling down a rabbit hole of emotion where I was going to do what these guys were doing. But what I was doing was poisoning my own spirit by saying, why weren't these guys, I'm a father, they were fathers. I'm a husband, they were husbands. I'm a Marine, they were Marine. I'm a leader, they were leader. And what I did is I started tying myself to them, what they did, and allowing them to be the reference when that's exactly, what hell wants you to do.
100%. You hit the nail on the head, man. Where you said you felt like it was getting closer to your door, and
Mm-hmm.
man, that thing, and he was creeping in, dude. I mean, that's the way he works, right? That's the way Satan works. He's the master of lies. He's the master of deception,
Yep.
and creeping in through those channels that you're talking about right now. And you're exactly right. And it's amazing to hear that your wife knew that you needed to be covered. You needed to be covered, man, and to put a stop to that attack. And man, thank God we have the resources to call upon to stop an attack like that. From
Absolutely.
creeping into our own families, man. That's a powerful story. Gosh, really hits me close to home. I mean, to hear that, man. I mean, I just can't. I cannot grasp suicide. I just can't. So,
Yeah.
and my sea daddy in the SEAL teams, he killed himself, man.
Yep.
We got back from a deployment and rolled right into another workup. We're in the middle of a workup, and he took his life, man. And this was the dude that trained me up, like in the ways of war, like mentored me. And go ahead.
No. Similarly, so when I was going through recruiting school, the senior enlisted leader of recruiting school for me committed suicide.
Yeah, it's just like what for me. I guess if anything, I had to be aware of when it happened in my life. I didn't have a chance to, I guess, mourn or comprehend that because we were right in the middle and we didn't stop. It's like it happened and we never stopped, never missed a beat.
Yep.
Dude, it desensitized I have been desensitized to death. It's the I don't know. I don't know how to fix it. I don't know if it needs to be fixed. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like I just can't. Maybe it's just because I could never grasp it. So I just I lost a close family member not long back. Didn't shed a tear, man. It's just like it's weird, man. I
Yeah.
can't grasp it. Isn't it? That story you told, I don't know, man. It's a powerful story, and I mean, the takeaways are solid though. You've brought it full circle in that last part that you just told right there, and you brought it full circle right there, man. I haven't been able to do that personally, and I'm glad to hear your perspective and how you've brought that all the way back around, and brought it to a point that you can share with people at least something valuable out of the circumstance,
Well, and I'll tell you, just as important as I think it is to share on a platform like this, I'm pleased to have, other stories where I've had young Marines after all these experiences, that have had issues and gotten in trouble with alcohol or were dealing with, with emotions that I felt were going in a direction that I was familiar with and that they weren't.
Mm-hmm.
And I was able to provide these stories, unfortunately, but fortunately, to really help heal some things before they really spiraled out of control. And again, making myself available, not to toot my own horn, but one thing that was taught to me by many mentors and better men and women than me was that at least in the military, from my understanding, is that you can always spot a strong leader when the people he was responsible for bring him their problems. And I'll tell you, I've had a lot of one-on-ones with some young people that have come to me because they felt like there was no confidence anywhere else. And that doesn't speak to the entire organization. That may just speak to a particular set of individuals. But I tell you, it meant a lot to me when I got to be the person that they could bring to, that they could trust. And in other circumstances, people would bring me certain situations just because they already knew that I had shared that perspective on life, or I've shared an experience, or made talked about my pains, talked about my weaknesses, talked about my failures, and where I got it wrong, and what I learned from it, and what I did with it. And it's been awesome to, through that time. I can remember Fred. This guy was a sergeant under me, and is now a retired staff sergeant. But I'll never forget when he came to me talking about, I don't know if I want to re-enlist, and here's what's going on with my wife, and we're not sure if we can make it. And we're talking, like we're using I call it the D word, but they're talking about divorce. And in my marriage, it's just the D word, and it's that reason because, my wife and I established, laws,
100%.
not rules to be broken, but laws that will not be broken, at the very beginning of this thing. And I shared that. And if there's one thing people will ever understand when they're around me for long enough, I am madly, insanely in love with the woman that I traded jewelry with. I mean, we are one. We are one. Our marriage is forever. It is. I have a screensaver on my. It's a picture on my cell phone. I look at it every single day. It's two skeletons holding hands. It says, "Till death do us part" is for quitters. And that's the way I want to live every single day of my life with my wife, until something bigger than us can take our hands apart. And
I love that, man. You said you've established laws and not rules to be broken. I love that, brother.
Yeah. And Fred came to me and I was like, here's some scenarios. Here's how you can have this conversation. Here's some things you can do. Here's some things you can discuss. And here's some reality to what you're getting yourself into. And I'm going to pray, while you go and do whatever you feel you need to do, I'm going to pray for you. And aside from just saying it and sending them into, a situation, I shot him text along the way. Hey man, hope things are going well. I'm praying for you every night and for your wife. And I hope that things are working out and that you're having productive conversations. And, he's been out of the Marine Corps for about a year now, but still married. He's got a daughter. He's an excellent father. He's an amazing husband. He's madly in love with his wife. And I hope that some of that is something that maybe I made contagious for him, because it was definitely contagious for me. So, yeah. And there's so many stories like that. I mean, I just, I'm not trying to have my name on a building or anything, but man, if love can be, transplanted, then that's all I ever want to be responsible for in time.
Amen to that, brother. Amen to that. Mike, I got to ask you now, transitioning from your career in the Marine Corps, why have you decided to run these crazy long distances, man?
Man, there's so many answers to it. And so I put this hashtag on just about every running post that I put out. I can't stop.
Yeah.
That's still my promise. That's still my promise. That kid on the Yellow Footprints, when he imagined all those things, when he had all those questions, none of them had anything to do with ceasing. And when I put on Christ and I became spiritually responsible for how people see heaven and how people understand the body of Christ or the church or whatever you want to call it, none of that involves stopping. This is death. Those bodies in the graveyard down the street, that's not a finish line. And I think ultra running is just a way to, it's a physical way to exercise that. It's amazing. So, this last weekend, I just went from, I've done 4 marathons and I've done a couple of half marathons, and that's great. And I was like, I did a couple of overnight events with some buddies that I planted a church with out in California. And I said, damn, I think there's more in the tank. And so I went out for the full marathon. I was like, yeah, let's do that again. Let's recreate it. Okay. Yeah. I'm not the fastest guy out there, but it's not the hardest thing in the world either. I didn't break. And so I've heard about ultra running and I was like, and I wonder how far I could go. And it was the same concept I had with every job responsibility I've ever gotten, with, the day of my wedding, the days that each day that I became a father to all 4 of my kids. I wonder how far we can go. I wonder how hard we can go. I wonder where we can take this. Man, what can this turn into? My friendships, like my buddy Adam, who introduced me to your podcast and the movement that you got going on here. I helped coach him a little bit and kind of, made the running thing contagious to him a little bit. In 18 months, he went from never running to back in May, we ran a 50K together.
Wow, man.
I mean, do something, seek growth and be contagious.
Yep.
That's it.
Dude, I got to write that down. Keep going, Mike.
There you go. Yeah. And so I do it because, I don't have to build my own house. I don't have to plow a field to get my groceries. I don't have to, rebuild my car from scratch. I don't have to. There's so many physical things that I don't have to do anymore. But God gave me one body, and I'm not going to turn in a dud when I get to heaven. I will say one person's full name, Sergeant Major Randy Motes. He was, when I was at a reserve unit the first time here in Texas, he was a man of faith, and he stood up with a lot of courage in his heart. He stood in front of the entire unit of Marines, and everybody said, "Why are you so hard? Why are you, always, so disciplined and so physically in shape?" He's an older guy, but he was very trim, he was a go-getter. He was the alpha male, right? And he stood up in front of everyone. He's like, "Everyone's got questions about my physical abilities and what I'm doing here." He's like, "I firmly believe, in my belief, that one day I'm going to have to stand before heaven. And I feel as if I'm going to be presented a new body, because that's what Scripture says. And it would be a waste to turn in a body that's still in good condition." And I'll tell you, man, I'm still sitting in the audience of that C-130 hangar listening to this man speak, 15 years ago. And I'm still like, Sergeant Major Randy Motes, And, even though it wasn't, go ahead.
Randy's what we would have called the bullfrog in the SEAL teams, man. He was the bullfrog, man. That's awesome.
Oh yeah,
that's awesome.
Well, and he was a reservist. He was a reservist sergeant major, but his full-time job, he was a cop out in the Abilene, Texas area. Man, he was getting it in every aspect of his life, mm-hmm. And he was like, "Well, you guys got questions? Well, here's my answer." And I'll tell you, young Corporal Cabrero. Still listening to that speech because, he was available.
Where do you think that you'll go with ultra running, Mike? Do you have a certain objective? Do you have a certain number, or are you not sure where that path is going to lead you? Because you're crushing it right now, man.
Well, obviously I'm going to get up to 100 milers. So, I don't know where it's going to take me. I wish it would take me out of this neighborhood off these sidewalks and show me some mountain views like you're getting, dude. So when
come out and run with me sometime, man.
As soon as this COVID thing, I got two of my boys have asthma, and I can't go on a running trip that could put them in harm's way if I come back with something. So, but no, for sure, when we get this thing under control, I'm shooting to Rome, Georgia, and we're doing it. We're gonna go chew dirt together, or if you make it this way, I don't care how it happens, it's gonna happen.
That'll work.
But I'll definitely tell you that what I love about this is that first off, even great athletes in other disciplines, in other sports, look at runners like we're crazy, and I love that look. I love that look so much. And I tell you, whenever I tell people that I'm an ultra runner, I'm an aspiring ultra runner. I wouldn't say I'm doing this mid-state mile like the animal that you are.
No, brother, you just ran 69 miles. You are an ultra runner. You can take the aspiring part out of there now.
Yeah, but what I love about it is that in today's society, it really takes something special to get people's attention, and I think it needs to be a healthy choice because there's too much negativity out there getting the attention of people in the world, and it's no surprise that that's the influence that it's creating, amongst the masses. And I feel like doing something healthy. Well, ultra running is probably not the healthiest thing to do to the body, but the discipline, the accountability, and the I mean, really those two things. But as they add up to going up to that place that most people don't want to go to, it creates a space for you. If you have a positive message, you have a positive influence that you can impact people with. It provides you with that stage. Like I said, I'm not trying to get my name on the front of a building or anything, but I want to impact people, and I feel like it is important to a certain degree to get people's attention. And one way to do that is ultra running. And some people do it with a bike and cycling. Some people do it with mountaineering, or some people do it with crafting wood in the garage,
Mm-hmm.
or what have you. Some people do, paper mache or art or dance or music or whatever. Um, but what I love about the fruits of the spirit is that we all have strength there. We all have strength somewhere. Um, what I love about walking into a room of non-runners is that there is a great education for me to gain in those people because they're doing something else fantastic that I do not understand how to do.
Yep.
And I'm not the smartest guy in the room. I'm the one with all the questions. I'm the one bugging them for information.
Yep.
Um,
And
so yeah,
I think that ultra running too, man, is a continued opportunity to lead by example. That's a huge thing for me. In the position that I'm in, that God's placed me in, of having the opportunity to reach a lot of people and to put out word, to put out information that I feel like sometimes people cling to. I have to stay on the ground level, man. I have
yeah,
to continue to lead by example, and ultra running is one of those things that provides that. It's basically it provides the opportunity for me to continue to practice what I preach and to lead by example, man. It does
yeah,
so many things for me too. It's what an amazing, and you talk about it giving another opportunity to I guess whatever you want to call it, to mentor people or to be in a environment to make that impact on other people. You think about on race day when you go do your 100 miler, you're going to be surrounded by all these individuals, and at some point in the race, you're gonna find a lot of the people around you are going to be broken down to their very core, dude.
oh yeah,
Everything is stripped away. Everything, any walls that we put up between each other as human beings,
yeah,
formalities, all of that stuff
oh
is
yeah,
stripped
oh yeah,
away, dude. And
yep,
that's boy, the grounds are ripe. In the
oh
midst of
yeah.
100-mile race, man.
One thing the aspects of ultra running that I really love are the fact that I mean, even with marathons, like, we can even stick it there. You know, you go run one marathon, I ran three others after that, and none of them were easy. Just because I got the first one done. Now I will say, slamming face first into the wall is definitely a great learning experience, and you never quite do it like you do the first time because you do learn how to face that adversity. But there's always something different. There's a different time of day, or a sprained ankle, or an injury, or a training thing, or a distance that you didn't hit, or a pace that you didn't do, or a
Yeah.
spot that you didn't hydrate, or whatever, or maybe you get a chafe in a different place, or your toe hits different in your shoe. It doesn't matter. But what's great is that it kind of tells the story of life. With every foot that you try to put in front of you towards your finish line, the entire world is working against you. There's friction, there's adversity, there's tired, there's effort, and you're not graded against anyone else. It's a me versus I relationship, and it's a struggle where you have to reach deep inside. And what I love about it is I find some really fascinating, really intelligent people getting into ultra running as I'm looking into the entire sport, around the world. And there's a lot of brain power on these race courses, man.
Yep.
And I don't mean just like a navigation and calculations, but I mean the fact that these people are digging deep inside themselves to really find what they're made of. And our comforts of modern society have taken those things away, but I love that there's things like ultra running where someone says, this is where you start, this is where you finish, and you figure it out.
Yeah. That's the
And
key.
man, you get to go to another version of you in that process. And
Yep.
man, I just can't get enough of it. My wife, she asks me every time, like at the start of the 69 miles, like, why are you doing this? You know, I'm like, gosh, man, babe, I got to go before that answer is going to be done. So, but yeah, it's just very special and very unique. And I'll definitely tell you, it's been cool even since I've gotten out. So, I've got at this last unit here in Fort Worth when I retired, my sergeant major at the time had recommended me to this Facebook group called MURCA, MURCA, Marine UltraRunners Club of America.
Yep.
And they were just started, back in 2017. And I got invited to kind of join in and be a part of the community because I just recently I'd gotten my first 50K done. And so they do a screening process, make sure like you legitimately served in the Marine Corps, that you legitimately, completed an ultra marathon and so on and so forth. Right. And they lay down basic rules. You have to have been a Marine. You have to be an ultra runner. You have to be a positive example and ambassador to the sport, and to the community of running and so on and so forth. But man, since I got plugged in with these folks, I was like, wow, this is my VFW. This is my Marine Corps League right here.
Oh, it's on now,
and,
dude.
Oh man. And
yeah.
it's crazy because we have some legends in the sport, in this club. And it's just, it's incredible to be around, like the fewer of the few. Like, I mean, I can remember so many times, even my peers as Marines saying, dude, why are you running when we're not at a physical fitness test? I'm like, I don't know. It just feels right to go run.
Yeah,
I just gotta go run. It's treadmills don't do it. Cycling doesn't do it. Your little 3-mile PFT doesn't do it. And so yeah, now that I've been in this group and associated with this club, man, I mean, the COVID things really got me down only because I'm interacting with these folks that are all over the place. Like, so me and 5 guys that are, I think a couple are a little bit older than me from different generations of the Marine Corps, probably a couple of generations just ahead of me. But the Trail Racing Over Texas organization here called TROT just held or is still holding the Trans Texas Virtual Run. It was just kind of a thing that hey, let's keep people involved in running and give them something to do. So you could go from anywhere from solo to a 5-man team, and it's basically running the 879 miles, logging in your miles and, sending all your Garmin links, to account for everything from one side of Texas to the other. And Don Willis, this, just a guy and his buddy up in, for part of the club, put together, hey, on the website or on the Facebook page, hey, I want to get a club together or a team together for this. Who wants to do it? So we get on there, and I was like, yeah, I'll do it. Made myself available, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we have 6 months to do this. Like starting July 1st to December 31st to log our miles and get whatever training we're going to get and, do this. And the website tracks us. I mean, they do all the cool things for this. And Texas is a big state, right? So you definitely want to, give it some effort. Dude, the 5 of us finished this on day 13. I mean,
you guys should have paced yourself a little better, Mike. Come on, man.
We did, man. We were Marine ultra runners, and we did it 10 miles each plus a day at a time.
Wow, man.
And it was just incredible because, we have our little messenger conversation going on with just me and my teammates. And dude, it was like I was wearing camouflage again. These guys, we got,
That's awesome, brother.
Oh man, I tell you, it's just an amazing community to belong to. And
it really is, man.
If there's any Marines out there that are veterans, active duty, reserves, officers, enlisted, doesn't matter from what generation, if you honorably served and you're interested in being a part of an organization that still loves what you love and still serves the community in the way that you do it, and you're willing to put your body on the line for more than 26.2 miles, look us up. It's an amazing organization and an inspiring group of people to belong to. And we hear people, even within that organization talking about inter-service relationships like, Chad here and what he's doing with 3 of 7 and for the, SEAL community and the Navy and, the armed forces. It's great to stay connected with like-minded people that are still growing beyond what the uniform provides.
Yeah, that's powerful, brother. That is powerful. And I got my eyes on a race out there in Texas. I need to check it out. I haven't looked at it in a while, but it's called the Franklins. It's a 200-mile. I guess there's some mountains out there in Texas somewhere.
Yeah, West Texas it gets mountainous.
Yeah.
We got everything in Texas, man.
Yeah, man. I looked at some photos from the race, and I'm really craving now for kind of that 200 plus mile distance. I don't know why it's starting to attract me a little more, and I don't know if it's going to be. I don't know what it's going to look like. I mean, I don't know if it's going to be a FKT attempt on like a long trail, like the Appalachian Trail or the Pinhoti Trail or something like that here on the East Coast, or if it's going to be a race like the Franklins. But that looks like an amazing race out there, man. It's a 200-miler. I think it's got some substantial climbing and descent. And I got to get out and see that part of the country anyways, man. I've never spent any significant time out there. So,
right.
Yeah, I got my eyes on that. Take a look at it. I know you got your sights set on the 100-miler right now.
Yeah.
I got a feeling you're going to accomplish that fairly quick. And,
well, I probably still need to get back and pace myself and go back and do the 50 and the 50 mile and the 100K that I passed up in this race.
No, don't worry about those, man. You can do those. You can do those when you're 70 or 75
Yeah,
years
right.
old, man. Yeah, I got a feeling you're going to knock that 100-miler out, because if you went 69, you're already in that steady state. You know, the 100-miler, it doesn't hurt any worse. It just requires a little more patience. That's all it is. That's all it becomes is patience. So. The Franklins is an awesome one, and I don't think it's really well known at this point. But,
I don't think I've heard much.
It's on Ultrasign Up. It's pretty sweet looking event, man.
Okay, I'll take a look at it, and if nothing else, man, if you need a Texas crew, dude, I've got some amazing. My buddy Adam, who got me in touch with you, he's a huge fan of yours, and your 3 of 7 podcast. He is amazing. He did 2 legs of my 69 miler in the afternoon or in the evening. Then his wife came out and did several miles with us. And then he got about 3.5 or 4 hours of sleep, and then came back the next morning to ensure I was still alive and still keep me
That's
going.
awesome, man. Well,
4 or 5 miles, man.
Trust me, I'm already. That's been in the back of my mind here at this last part of our conversation, as it's revolving around ultra running. Is, man, I've been thinking about that race out there in Texas, and now I got all these good buddies out in Texas, and it's like, man, we might have to all come together here soon. That would be an awesome adventure for us to all go on together, dude.
Oh, man.
Talk about some stories, brother.
I would lose my mind. I'd lose a lot of weight too, but
I heard that, brother. Well, hey, man, we're coming up on 3 hours here. It didn't seem that long, did it?
No, it did not.
So
that's awesome, man.
Yeah, man, that was what a powerful conversation, and I know there's so much more there. I hope you were able to share the things that were on your heart, man, because for sure. I know it definitely impacted me. I can't wait to put this out to our audience, brother. You just you crushed it, brother, and we're so thankful for you and thankful for your willingness to share and be honest and be an open book and make yourself available. I mean, I don't know what I'm going to title this episode. It's either going to be Make Yourself Available or Seek Growth and Be Contagious. It's going to be one of those two, because that's just been really a foundation of our conversation here today. I want you to put out real quick to our audience where people can find you and follow you, Mike.
Yeah, so it's just Mike Cabrero on Facebook, MikeCabrero. On Instagram, it's the same, Mike Cabrero 22. And you can also find me on hashtag I Can't Stop. That's pretty much what I put most of my posts out as. Otherwise, that's pretty much it, man. Now you can find me on 3 of 7 podcast, and wherever Chad Wright is running in Texas, I will also be there. So I'm also started the groundwork for a book, but I don't want to get too heavy into that because it's still a very soft foundation. But I really want to impact whoever the next generation is that's going to fill our shoes, and I want to empower them to really step up and make a strong effort to make the people around them better. So that's what we're doing. And much love to you, Chad. Don't want to forget your wife, Brooke, and the communication that she provided to get me here. Thank you so much for her and her hard work. And your brother that I know is working with you in this effort. And just so blessed that you provide this platform, brother, and so thankful for your service.
Well, thank you so much, brother, and right back at you. Thank you for your service, Mike, and not only in the military, but as you continue to serve and coming on here, like I said, making yourself available, dude. It's just unbelievable the people that God has put into my path, and the people that God has empowered to stand up and be a part of 3 of 7 project, and we couldn't do it without men like you, brother. So we're going to wrap it up right there, Mike. This is the 3 of 7 podcast. Enough said. Mike, appreciate it, brother.
Same to you, man. Have a good one, and I look forward to racing with you and running with you, man.
Roger that, brother. I'll be in touch.
All right, bro. Have a good night.
See you, Mike. You too.
Yes, sir. Bye.